Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 626. Perfect Timing. Michael's attack was in perfect timing. He swung his Unity Saber towards Potbowl, launching the reality-shredding crescent strike towards him. But at that same moment, Potbowl closed his eyes and summoned the diva above his head. The projection of a millennium tree, one with massive roots and thick trunks, gave Potbowl the serenity that he needed. Suddenly, Potbowl's skin started to glow golden, much like a Buddha. With his ability activated, his entire body was now completely invulnerable to any attacks. Even though Potbowl was unable to see Michael in time, he was able to guess, purely from pure instinct and battle IQ, that he was going to get attacked from behind. So as a precaution, he immediately activated his ability to nullify any attack that Michael could conjure. Just then, the reality-shredding crescent strike finally hit him back, with the millennium tree above him projecting its ethereal glow to resist the attack. Potbowl, confident of his own defense, quickly raised his battle axe and ready to counterattack. But it was in that moment that he felt a sharp pain from behind him. Blood poured down his back. He looked behind him and saw the crescent strike shredding the very reality around Millennium Tree's protection. It slashed through his impermeable defense and cleaved a deep injury spanning from his right shoulder down to his left waist. Potbowl looked down. A horrified look descended upon his face as he saw his own blood dripping down into the ground. Somehow he got injured. Even when he was using his 9th stage ability that allowed him to literally be impervious to any attack, he still incurred a large gash on his back. The pain he was feeling was nothing compared to the damage to his pride and his own self-esteem. He couldn't understand how his own ability had failed to stand up against an attack from a 4th stage magnetic. No one could. Aerith, Bobby, and all the other players competing in the game stared at Michael. Even they weren't confident that they would have been able to injure Potbowl normally, especially if he had his ability activated. But somehow Michael did. Even the crowd watching from above went entirely speechless. They stood up and wiped their eyes, wondering if what they saw was correct. No way. How can Potbowl get injured? He activated his ability. What are Michael's powers? First, he has speeds that can surpass 9th stage magnetics, and second, he has a power that can even injure someone invincible. Meanwhile, the mermen, who weren't usually impressed by things of human nature, couldn't help but applaud Michael's talents. This kid might be the first decent talent I've seen in the overworld, one the merman commented. So young too. If he weren't a human, then I would have wanted to recruit him to our family. What do you think, mistress? They all turned towards the woman in the highest seat, with hair as curly as seaweeds and as orange as the setting sun. How interesting, she muttered. Her voice indicated her youth, probably only a few years older than Michael. He's able to use that while being so low in cultivation? I didn't even know that was possible, she muttered. One of the mermen couldn't help but speak up. What do you mean, mistress? Unlike her, most of the mermen here were completely clueless about human cultivation. The woman opened her mouth, about to explain, when her attention was suddenly pulled towards the pocket dimension. She noticed something on the corner of her eyes. A very fast blur was rushing towards the center, aiming for the platform containing the drops of Su. Looks like we'll see it soon, she said, with an intrigued smile on her face. While Potbowl was still shocked at seeing his own blood drip down to the ground, Michael took this chance and ran towards the next drop of Su. He stretched out his hands and grasped at the vial on top of the pillar. Immediately, another beam of light shone down from the skies and officially signaled his ownership of the drop of Su. 2 drops down. This is my chance. With Potbowl out for the moment, there was no one else left to stop him from using the rest of his 300% battery energy to quantum step towards 10 other drops of Su. His hands started to bend reality, warping the fabric of space, when all of a sudden, he felt the air turn heavy around him. Cuckoo. Finally, a worthy opponent. He could feel Harbinger stir at the moment that he felt the change in atmosphere, as if his blood boiled with excitement. Just then, a sudden explosion caused him to turn his head. He saw 2 players get launched away due to the shockwave, with their bodies teleporting in midair, meaning that with just that explosion alone, they were knocked out and eliminated from the game. A fast object blurred from the point of explosion and dashed towards the next group of players, eliminating them from the game with just one eruption as well. One by one, players kept dropping like flies. Aerith and Bobby both stopped in their tracks and looked at this blur, with their eyes showing shock and surprise. "Damn it! He's done it," Aerith said, clicking her tongue. "He's left us in the dust again," Bobby muttered. It was at that point when the blur dashed towards them. Aerith raised her giant needle, using it as a sword to block the attack. Bobby held his hammer upside down, using it for pure defense. As the blur crashed towards them, an explosion burst outwards and created a shockwave that disturbed the soil and silt on the ground. It was only when the dust settled a few seconds later did everyone finally catch a glimpse of this blurry creature. Aerith and Bobby were still standing, with their arms and bodies shaking as they felt an immense amount of force pushing them down. Even their 9th stage cultivation didn't seem enough to stand their ground. In front of them was someone everyone was familiar with. It was the famous Alaric Goldstone, said to be the strongest magnetic in all of Metropolis. But his strength shouldn't be more powerful than 2 9th stage magnetics holding him down. Yet, he was still able to push Aerith and Bobby down to their knees. There's something different about him. What is he wearing? I know that. That's. Alaric's entire body was clad in black armor, which was seemingly made out of obsidian. His head was covered in a helmet, with large bulbous visors around his eyes that had millions of little specks around its surface. Above his forehead were 2 black antennae, subtly moving as it scanned around the area. And perhaps the most distinct and most eye-catching feature on his new attire were the pair of black and white wings on his back. His wings were larger than his own arms, making the eye-like design on it become that much more intimidating to anyone who gazed at him. Meanwhile, atop the auction, the so-called mistress smiled as she gazed at Alaric's new form. "Now that, my dear brothers, is the next realm of the diva cultivation that humans have. It is called the Nascent Spirit Realm." Chapter 627, Nascent Spirit. Michael looked at Alaric's new form and felt the hairs on his arms stand up. The power that he was emanating was incredibly powerful, enough to make him know that this wasn't just the power that a 9th stage body formation magnetic could make. This was beyond that. "Harbinger, what is this? Kukuko. It seems like that kid has been hiding his true strength after all. He has already transcended into the next realm." Alaric had broken through, and with this next realm, Michael could feel the ability power emanating from him even without looking through his drones. It was so powerful that it was starting to become visible to the naked eye. He could see why. His diva wasn't merely projected above him. Instead, it was inside him. It had merged with him. That was why his attire was completely different from his normal clothes. In fact, it wasn't an attire at all. That was his body. The obsidian-like armor around his body was his own skin. Alaric's black butterfly diva had united with his body, allowing him access to the enormous energy of his diva. So this is the next realm, Michael thought, his eyes filled with both awe and fear. Just then, a violet aura emanated from Alaric's body as he pushed Aerith and Bobby into the ground. The power was too much for them to bear, causing them to collapse into the ground, writhing in pain. And using his drone vision, Michael was able to see through Alaric's body and the way that his ability power spread throughout his body. Unlike normal activation of an ability where the AP threads extend outwards into the real world to alter the reality, Alaric used his enormous and blinding ability power to instead empower his new butterfly-human hybrid body. "That looks familiar," he remarked. But no matter how much he wanted to find the connection in his memory, he knew that he didn't have time to contemplate. With 2 of his greatest competitors taken out, Alaric set his compound butterfly eyes towards the red platform. He flapped his black and white butterfly wings, allowing him to float in midair and slowly make his way towards the drops of Sue. Just then, Potbowl jumped towards Alaric and faced him with his battle axe. "So you've transcended to the nascent spirit realm. How long have you been hiding this power?" Potbowl asked. "I achieved my breakthrough a few days ago," Alaric replied, with his voice sounding echoey and a timbre lower than his usual tone. Potbowl bit his lips, frustrated that he had been misled. He was treating Alaric as his rival, as his equal adversary. But the truth was that he never had a chance. Alaric had transcended into the next realm. The power difference between the 9th stage of body formation and the 1st stage of nascent spirit was as high as the earth and the heavens above. Potbowl raised his battle axe, swinging it with full force at Alaric with his ability power running at full force. But Alaric simply raised his hand, catching the battle axe with his bare fingers. Potbowl tried to retrieve his weapon, but it wouldn't budge. Just then, Alaric balled up his other fist and pulled back his arm, getting ready to punch him. The ethereal glow of the Millennium Tree appeared around Potbowl's body, allowing him to have an invincible body. Alaric's hands blurred, punching Potbowl right in his stomach. The The violet aura around Alaric's hands clashed against Potball's ethereal golden glow, popping it like a balloon. Potball felt the power of Alaric's punch in his gut, sending him flying through the air and towards the outskirts of the pocket dimension itself. Alaric landed back on the ground, ready to obtain his prize. But just then, another beam of light shone down into the ground, showing that another drop of Sue had been claimed. Michael claimed his third drop. While Alaric was dealing with Potbowl, he sneakily rushed to get the next vial in line. I don't think I can sneak another drop. Alaric was staring at him, with his big, compound eyes showing no emotion whatsoever. His whole face was indifferent. It was as if he knew that from this point onward, there was nothing that Michael could do to get the other drops. With all of the 9th stage magnetics done and dealt with, it seemed inevitable that Alaric would obtain the rest of the Sue drops in the platform. I only have one shot, one quantum slash left on my battery. Judging from the speed Alaric had shown, it seemed that even his quantum step wouldn't be enough to outpace him. If he wanted a fighting chance, then he needed to go big. He raised his Unity Saber, gathering all the energy left in his batteries to power his hands. As the reality warped around his Unity Saber, Alaric floated up and flew towards him at incredibly fast speeds, turning his entire body into a blur. Michael gripped the switch tight as he unleashed the shredding of the fabric of space in a crescent shape that launched it forward, just as Alaric arrived in front of him. Alaric was mere inches away from the crescent, with glowing plasma illuminating his face with an orange glow. But just as it was about to hit him, Alaric raised his hand and grabbed at the crescent with his bare hands. Alaric's face changed from indifference into one of mild surprise. He was feeling a slight discomfort from Michael's attack. Yet it was nothing more than a scratch. Reality tried to rip apart in his hands, but Alaric's violet aura suppressed the power forcefully, mending it back in place. Gripping the crescent, Alaric pushed it back towards Michael, letting the ripping reality shred the Unity Saber in his hands. Michael clutched his weapon tightly, trying to fight against Alaric's power. But it was futile. His strength was akin to an ant trying to push a car. Eventually, he felt the switch in his hands start to tremble intensely before it exploded into pure dust, releasing the Unity beam flying off into the skies. Just being in close proximity to Alaric's ability power caused his own ability to falter under the pressure. Gritting his teeth, still indignant, still persistent, Michael opened up the batteries in his chest and tried to absorb the power coming from Alaric's body. Within an instant, all 7 batteries went from a 0% battery charge and shot up to 100%, and then 1000%. His batteries glowed red-hot and trembled under the power it was trying to contain. But as Alaric's body exuded more ability power, his batteries kept on absorbing them, causing the very material in his batteries to disintegrate. His ability couldn't hold on any longer and exploded outwards, causing Michael to fly backwards into a tree, almost making him go unconscious. He coughed, with blood coming out of his mouth. But he didn't care. He looked up and saw Alaric coming closer to the pillars. Forcing his body to move, he crawled towards the platform. Alaric touched a vial, obtaining a drop of Sue. Walking over to the next one, he obtained another. And then another. At this point, it seemed like he would obtain all remaining Sue drops for himself. It looked like the auction would finally be over. Chapter 628. Innovation. With Alaric's nascent spirit cultivation, there was no one else who could match his strength and his speed. The drops of Sue were getting claimed left and right, with no one else to stop him. The crowd, and even Barnaby, was starting to prepare his announcement for the inevitable end of the auction. Even the orange-haired female merman clicked her tongue in disappointment. "Ah, I was really rooting for the little guy," she said. "But it looks like the auction is finally over. Let's go." With her cue, the merman started their preparation to leave the VIP rooms. With blood dripping out of his mouth, and his legs twitching and barely able to move, even Michael was starting to accept that he was going to lose the other drops. He obtained 3 drops anyway, which was already a bonus that he wasn't even supposed to obtain. He was supposed to be the last one to get a chance at the drops, but he still got 3 drops despite the obstacles in his way. He should be satisfied with that. He should be content. But there was something in his heart that just wouldn't quit. Kept thumping, urging him to move his body and get those drops that he very much deserved. Cuckoo, that's right, Michael. Move. As he delved down into the void of his own mind, it was as if time itself stopped as he looked up at the giant figure of Harbinger, with most of his body still shrouded in a dark cloud. Is this your limit? Are you willing to accept defeat in the face of someone stronger? With such a large gap between their strengths, no one would even be questioning his decision to give up. Alaric's nascent spirit cultivation was something that he couldn't overcome, even with all the advantages he had over others. His quantum step seemed like a leisurely walk in front of Alaric, his quantum slash nothing but a scratch. The difference between them was thoroughly obvious. Yet Michael didn't want to accept his defeat. He wanted to fight. He wanted to obtain those drops. "Give me strength, Harbinger," he said, pleading. But this time, Harbinger was silent. It looked at him with a solemn face, as if it was nothing more than a mere statue. Michael sighed, knowing that divas weren't almighty that could create a miracle with a single snap of a finger. He opened his eyes and saw Alaric obtaining another vial, making his total into 4 drops. His heart dropped, feeling jealous of something that wasn't even his in the first place. And it was in that moment that a thought flashed through his mind. He remembered the moment when he was face to face with Alaric, when he grabbed the quantum slash with his own hands. Being so close to Alaric made him feel the ability power emanating off of his body. Back in the heat of the moment, he felt a strange familiarity with it, as if he had seen it all before. But it was only in this moment where the links finally aligned and he grasped the truth. He looked down at his own wrists, realizing that he had been doing the same thing. Alaric was using his ability power to empower his physical strength beyond that of a normal human. His quantum step and his quantum slash worked exactly in the same way, altering the reality of his own body instead of altering the reality outside his own. The techniques Harbinger taught him were something that only nascent spirit cultivators could do. Kukukuku. You finally realized it. Took you long enough. His mind was blown. No wonder they cost a lot of ability power. Those were techniques meant for when he advanced to the next realm of diva cultivation. You were teaching me something above my own realm? You can do that? I told you. This is our advantage against all those other soulless divas. They have to pave the way while I show you the way. But it's not only because of me that you were able to perform those techniques. I didn't teach you how to gather enough energy to execute them. You learned it all on your own. Even with Harbinger's teachings, everything would have been useless had he not figured out how to create the battery. You say you want strength, then get it yourself. Think, Michael. These innovations, these breakthroughs, when does it happen? Harbinger's words made him remember back to the moments when he first awakened his abilities. For the Switch, it was only when he was pushed to the brink with his fight against Blazel did he finally awaken his first power. Then during the auction, he learned how to use his Switch to create the Unity Saber and the Unity Cage. Fighting against Bo, losing to her, forced him to awaken his second ability, the reverse graphite block. And in these last 2 games, he fought against Magnetics 3 to 4 stages above him, forcing him to improvise and learn new techniques. He had to if he wanted to survive. All the things these moments had in common was the fact that he was pushed to the brink of defeat, with seemingly no way out. It was the times when he needed to get stronger or else risk failure or even his life. Necessity is the mother of innovation, he realized. Harbinger's mouth glowed with a bright smile under the dark fog, illuminating his face for a brief moment. Exactly. Ask yourself this question. Why did humans evolve to become the greatest species in the world? It's because they advanced. They adapted. When humans needed food to survive in the wild, they found a way to make their own with agriculture. When nature itself became inhospitable, they carved cities out of mountains. They built land that reached the skies. They built civilizations. And when their land became too crowded, they braved through the toughest seas and conquered new frontiers. And when that wasn't enough, they took to the stars and transcended their own mortal fates. That is what the future is all about, Michael. When our powers are not enough, we have to adapt. We have to change. We have to be better. We are the harbingers of the future. Michael opened his eyes, with a gaze filled with clarity and understanding. Finally, it made sense as to why Harbinger kept pushing him to fight Magnetics much stronger than him. It's because Harbinger knew that it would only push him to become better. And he did. The same could be said now. He looked up and saw Alaric moving towards his next target. He had just obtained his 5th vial, and was about to go for his 6th. He saw no way of ever defeating Alaric with his cultivation. Speed, power, ability, none of those he could overcome. He was thoroughly outclassed in every way right now. But what about in the future? He reached down into his pockets, retrieving the reverse graphite block from his inventory. He looked at its cassette-like structure, with one spool of tape on the left side and one on the right. Atop the left spool was the button for his reverse ability, and atop the right one was completely empty. Until right now, a new button emerged, made entirely out of graphite. With one swift move, he clicked it. Clink. Chapter 629. Adaptation. As soon as he clicked on the button, he felt his heartbeat increase to what seemed like 1,000 beats per second. His Godforge pieces worked overtime, glowing hotter and hotter than it had ever been before. He clutched his chest, feeling the discomfort of having his heart overwork like an engine. His entire body felt hot, as if lava was pumping through his veins. Steam started to rise up from his skin as the water molecules around his body started to immediately boil into a gaseous state. His adolescent body couldn't take the power generated by the Godforge pieces. It was starting to destroy it. So he had to adapt. with blood circulating through his body 1,000 times per second. His cells started to accelerate their multiplication. His bones, under intense pressure and energy from the ability power given off by his God-forged pieces, started to have microscopic fractures. However, the accelerated cell reproduction in his body healed them immediately, making them stronger, bigger, better. This happened throughout all of his organs and his physical structure, breaking them down and growing them into an advanced version of his body. In a few moments, his height started to grow, inch by inch as his body experienced an accelerated growth. His jaws turned sharper. His golden hair grew past his ears, and his juvenile muscles started to mature and take shape into one of an adult's. His body aged 5 years in an instant, turning him into an 18-year-old. With his mature body, he could finally manage the toll of power that his God-forged pieces created. Everyone watching this from above couldn't help but gasp as they witnessed an impossible transformation right in front of their very eyes. As the steam around Michael's body dissipated, they finally laid their eyes on Michael. The childish and cute Michael that they were so familiar with had turned into an Adonis, with his undersized clothes fitting around his muscles tightly. Rena and Bo's cheeks flushed with flusteredness as they saw Michael in the same age group as them. He's handsome. Just then, a golden aura manifested throughout Michael's body, engulfing him with pure ability power coming straight from his heart. It was at this moment that Harbinger's hands manifested above him, and as his God-forged pieces pumped more and more AP, his body no longer rejected it. It absorbed it like a sponge, retaining all of the power it generated, causing his diva's projection to become more and more real, as if it was starting to merge into reality. He raised his hands, moving it towards the futuristic mechanical limbs of Harbinger. The robot arms descended down towards his body, phasing through him until it locked into place with his own arms. Large, stainless steel metal shoulder pads latched onto his skin, finishing its transformation as a real object as it made contact with his body. Synthetic fibers weaved itself through his upper arm, forming his biceps and triceps. Glowing white lights pulsated throughout his skin, giving a glimpse of the complicated circuitry now in his veins. After that, an unknown metal as stretchy as rubber but as hard as iron formed around the joint of his elbows, with mechanisms hiding underneath it. Then, sleek metal guards latched onto his forearm, with unknown symbols flashing on its surface like a screen. And finally, he grabbed at the robotic hands, forming around him like a glove. Every inch of his arm was covered in some kind of metal, with flashing lights and complicated mechatronics whirring from underneath all the armor. Finally, he fused with his diva. He achieved something impossible, something that shouldn't have happened until much later in his cultivation. He fast-forwarded to the point in his life when he achieved the nascent spirit cultivation. And as his fusion with his diva finished, the golden aura around him exploded out and created a shockwave almost as powerful as a bomb. The ground underneath his feet tapered off, reduced to mere dust in the wind. The trees around him broke off from their roots, splintering into hundreds of pieces. The air created a furious wind, one that even made Alaric stop in his tracks and look back at Michael. It was emanating the same intensity of strength he had. Michael's matured body confused Alaric at first, thinking that he was a different person. But the golden hair on his head basically confirmed his identity. But that wasn't the surprising thing about him. Alaric's eyes panned over to the part of Michael's body where his ability power was most concentrated. He noticed the mechanical arms around Michael, with his face morphing into one of shock and confusion as he realized what he was seeing. He had merged with his diva. It was incomplete, with only his arms fully merged together. But that was undoubtedly the same diva that Michael manifested earlier before. Impossible! Alaric muttered. Even the crowd watching from the auction couldn't believe their eyes. Michael, the boy who had a fourth-stage body formation cultivation, had turned into a full-fledged man who merged with his diva. Everyone was speechless. Even the female merman had to get up from her seat to realize that what she was seeing was the real thing. "This can't be," Alaric muttered in disbelief. Just then, Michael opened his eyes, showing a glowing light. He smiled, with a hint of arrogance and assuredness. "Nothing's impossible with me. Nothing's impossible with me." Michael and Harbinger's voice mixed together, creating a double tone that almost created an echoing effect. As soon as Alaric heard that, the two antennae atop his head wiggled with unease. He felt danger coming ahead. Suddenly, Michael's robotic hands pulsated with activity. The metal surrounding his elbows morphed as nanoparticles rearranged themselves to form the nozzle of a rocket ship. His elbows glowed with an orange light as a jet stream pulsated out from the nozzle, creating an intense force around his arms that started to bend the very fabric of space. This was the quantum step, and in an instant, Michael disappeared from Alaric's compound eyes, surprising him. He flusteredly looked around before finding Michael on the red platform, touching a vial of Sue in his hands and claiming it as his own. That's for Alaric's wings flapped, creating a small gust of wind around him that grew and grew until it eventually formed a large tornado imbued with pure ability power. Clouds brewed overhead, with thunder crackling and lightning striking the tornado and empowering it with electricity. With a single flap of the wing, Alaric was able to create a disastrous calamity. This was his technique, the butterfly effect. Alaric jumped towards the tornado, empowering his entire body with the chaos and power of natural phenomena. With tremendous power in his hands, Alaric charged towards Michael at near instantaneous speeds. After admiring the vial of Sue in his hands, Michael leisurely looked back at Alaric with a cocky smile on his face. He casually raised his right hand. "Stop! Stop!" Suddenly, Alaric stopped in place, with his posture still mid-punch and with his fist just a few inches away from Michael's face. Chapter 630, Victory. Alaric found himself unable to move. His body refused to. He could feel the diva inside him shivering in fear, as if the very sound of Michael's voice was making it recoil in fright. Michael turned back his attention towards the vials of Sue. One by one, he touched every pillar in the red platform. He got his fifth, his sixth, his seventh, and continued on. Alaric could only watch helplessly as Michael obtained every single drop of Sue still available on the platform. As Michael touched the last vial, the last beam of light shone down from the heavens above and illuminated the drop of Sue in his hands. He did it. In the end, he got all 10 drops. With his job done, the Godforge pieces in Michael's heart started slowing down. The mechanical armor around his arms started to lose their physicality, turning into a projection that slowly dissipated in the air. His body rapidly cooled down, with his skin starting to frost everywhere around his body. His muscles shrank, his bones lost volume, and his newly regenerated abundance of cells regressed one by one. In just a few moments, his body turned back into adolescence, one fitting for a 13-year-old boy. Pushing himself into the future put a large toll on his body, his mind, and his soul. He fell to his knees and collapsed on the ground. The auction had finally ended. Even after the game had concluded, nobody was moving. They had their eyes focused and still rapt at Michael. What they saw was beyond comprehension. It was something out of reality, and even out of imagination. If someone told them yesterday that they would see a fourth-stage magnetic boy merge with his diva and win the game, they would have just ignored them and wouldn't even entertain the idea. Aerith, Bobby, and Potbowl, who had been eliminated from the game earlier, looked at Michael with shock. Even though they were in the 9th stage of body formation, they knew they were still far away from merging with their divas. Yet he did it. It was incomplete, but he still did it. Even the so-called experts in diva cultivation and abilities had no answer for what they had just seen. That was supposed to have been impossible. From Michael's flying mithril artifact weapons to his reality-defying powers, everything around Michael seemed impossible. Barnaby himself was still utterly shocked at what Michael had done. Just like the others, he was just blankly staring at the pocket dimension, not knowing what to do even though the game had technically ended. "Ladies and gentlemen, the game is over," he muttered out, still in disbelief. It was only when Michael and Alaric were both teleported out of the pocket dimension did reality truly sink in for Barnaby. Michael won. He won against Alaric and all the other major factions in Metropolis. He obtained 10 drops from 15, all the while only having himself for his team. And one might also add that he was only in the 4th stage of body formation. He immediately had his best doctors and magical physicians oversee Michael's recovery. The boy was still breathing steadily, which meant that he was probably just completely exhausted from the fight. Barnaby considered this a miracle, given how much he must have strained himself to achieve what he had achieved. The results of tonight's game for the Spirit of Old Drops have been decided. Give it up for Alaric and the Gilder & Company, who obtained 5 drops of Sue in total. This is an outcome that we expected going into the auction. But the overall winner of tonight's bidding is someone that I bet had never crossed your ears before this auction. He is someone who has shown great talent in magic, in cultivation, and even in innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you all to clap your hands for the owner of the Reborn Company, to the innovator of the automobiles, and the current sensation of the entirety of Metropolis, Michael Vanderbilt. Barnaby's announcement finally broke everyone's stupor, making them focus back into the auction. There were a few points in his speech that caught their ears. Did I hear that right? He's the one who created the automobiles. This, in particular, stirred up a lot of conversation and discussions amongst the crowd. The automobiles, which now everyone considered to be the future of transportation, was created by none other than Michael and the Reborn Company. So that's where he gets all his money from. Michael's apparent wealth that could even rival that of the major factions was something that was highly debated around. But now the truth finally came out. Soon after that, the pieces fell into place. He owned the automobiles, which was probably why the Duchess seemed to favor him so much that she was even willing to give her black medallion to him. He owned the automobiles, so Barnaby was implored to give him one of the VIP suites in the auction. If they start to sell automobiles in Metropolis, I really think that the Reborn company is going to become part of the major factions in the future. Michael had shown strength and power deserving of a high spot in the rankings. He defeated Bo and the Rising Six, meaning that he should replace her in the top spot. Many were still doubting that he deserved that spot, given that power wasn't the only factor in a ranking. But this revelation completely upended that. He deserved that ranking and more, especially with what he showcased in this game. And once Michael's last name was revealed to everyone, their fate in the major factions seemed all the more fitting. He's a Vanderbilt. Due to unfortunate circumstances, the Vanderbilt name was tarnished in Metropolis. It was no longer the prestigious title it once was, with many thinking that the talents of the great Lion Eyes Vanderbilt weren't passed down to his descendants. But Michael's very presence disproved that. With his abundant talent at such a young age, it seemed that he was destined to bring the Vanderbilt name back to the top. Meanwhile, in the Merman's VIP suite, the red-haired young mermaid peered through the tinted glass and watched as Michael got escorted away into the backstage. There was excitement and adoration in her eyes. "I have to meet him," she exclaimed. The mermen around her immediately disagreed with her decision. "Young mistress, we simply do not have time for trifling matters." The young mermaid immediately protested. "You don't understand. This guy is special. He's different." Her frustration only grew more as she saw how clueless her merman attendants were to what they just witnessed. They were completely ignorant to human cultivation, which meant they didn't know the significance to what Michael had just pulled off. "Need I remind you that your father has tasked you with this mission, young mistress? We have to find the Pixie Queen. We cannot waste any more time." The young mermaid bit her lips, unable to hold on to her frustrations. She could only curse her luck that finding Michael coincided at a very critical juncture in her mission in the surface world. Chapter 631. After Party. Immediately after the conclusion of the final game, Barnaby announced that the dinner and after-party of the auction would commence shortly. This happens every year after a successful auction, allowing the companies and the crowd to mingle with each other socially, celebrate wins, or even discuss business opportunities. After all, one purpose of the games was to show competence to potential customers and investors. That was why many up-and-coming companies were eager to show their worth. Almost everyone was present, from the Duchess Regina and her royal family, as well as the other important figures like the Tower Master as well as Kruger, the Heavenly Knight who trained Potbowl to be the beast he was now. But despite the important figures present in the party, there was just one person missing from attendance. Michael Vanderbilt. His presence was sorely missed, with a lot of companies and people disappointed that they couldn't introduce themselves to the rising star of Metropolis. The demand for the name Michael Vanderbilt was at an all-time high, especially after the revelation that he was the one who invented the automobiles. It wouldn't be hard to guess why a lot of these people wanted to make a connection with Michael. However, Michael and the entirety of the Reborn company were completely gone from the auction. After collapsing from exhaustion, Michael was whisked away into the best health facility that was managed by Aerith herself. Their branch of Sinclair's Elixir was the best option available by a long shot. Of course, all of his teammates and his family rushed to his side in worry, which explained their absence for tonight's gathering. But the event wasn't entirely quiet either. There was one presence in the after-party that gathered everyone's attention. Her curly orange hair, white and pale skin, as well as her striking blue eyes made for a striking combination of beauty that would have captured anyone's attention. But they weren't just focused on her face. The deep blue and violet scales surrounding her face immediately painted her as someone non-human. She was a mermaid and seemingly one with a noble background as well. Compared to the other mermen surrounding her, this mermaid wore exotic and extravagant stringed pearls as her necklace and opalescent dark beads as her earrings. Those that were familiar with merman culture and about the deep sea in general knew that those pearls weren't just taken from ordinary clams and oysters. Those were byproducts of ancient monster mollusks living in the deepest depths of the ocean, tens of thousands underneath sea level. No human and no ordinary merman could survive an encounter with those beasts, so those special pearls became a symbol of power and influence in Atlantis. So they're the mermen I've been hearing about. I've never seen them before. They look like ordinary humans apart from some cosmetic differences. They're even breathing through their noses. I thought they'd only have gills. That's because they're in the surface world. Once they're underwater, their physical bodies change slightly to accommodate life in the harsh seas. They grow gills on their necks and grow webbing on their hands for easier movement through the water. As much as a lot of people wanted to approach the orange-haired mermaid, the mermen surrounding her intimidated everyone into keeping their distance. There was only one person who could approach, and that was Duchess Regina, who had met them before. She was the one who invited them to Metropolis in the first place. "Princess Serena, I hope you enjoyed the auction for tonight," the Duchess said, greeting with a slight bow. Serena smiled back at her and returned a bow. I must admit, Duchess, I didn't think my trip to the surface world would be so exciting. Immediately, the Duchess knew what she was talking about, or rather, who. Yes, I think we've all been surprised tonight. Even I never expected that boy to be that powerful. He truly is one of a kind. The Duchess's praise came straight from the heart, which she saw that Serena responded positively to. I know, right? Serena replied, her excitement rushing. Noticing this, the Duchess offered to mediate a meeting between the two of them. I could introduce you, if you'd like. Really? She was about to continue her conversation with the Duchess about Michael when her attendants behind her coughed, signaling for her to get back on topic. Serena pursed her lips and sighed. It's all right. There are other matters that I have to attend to. Is something the matter, Princess? The Duchess asked, noticing the impatient look on her face. If it's in my capacity and the entirety of Metropolis, then perhaps I can help you. As you know, Duchess, our mission in the surface world is to make sure that the cooperation between us sea dwellers and the Draconians will go smoothly. My father wants to ensure that the connection between the continents will continue from this point onwards, and this trial run will make or break those plans. The Duchess nodded in understanding. As the sitting royal of a capital city, she knew about the politics surrounding the agreement between the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. Both would stand to gain a lot from this endeavor, so they had to make sure that nothing would go wrong. One of the things that I have to do is to find a way to integrate our culture into yours. Mermen find it hard to go into the surface world because our needs are completely different than humans, and vice versa. This makes for a very mismatched coalescence of the two different cultures. To remedy that, I have a simple solution. I would like to formally announce to the citizens of Metropolis that I, Princess Serena, am offering a limited-time deal to humans. If you can obtain 10,000 sand dollars, then you can purchase 1 drop of the spirit of old. Serena modulated her voice at the last part, letting the entirety of the party hear her words. This revelation sent shock and awe to all companies present. Is she serious? They're letting us buy Sue drops. No way. And it's at an extremely discounted price too. It only costs 10,000 sand dollars to get 1 single drop of Sue. The Duchess was also surprised to hear this. All this time, the Ocean King regulated the selling of Sue drops very strictly. Sometimes you couldn't even buy them even if you had a lot of money. But now, he was giving humans a direct line to the very source of Sue drops. This was unprecedented. Wait, sand dollars? That's the merman's currency, right? How are we going to get that? Many people's excitement was tempered once they realized that Sue drops would still be as hard to obtain as before. After all, mermen had no reason to spend their sand dollars in the surface world. Even if you gave them 100 billion gold coins in exchange for a single sand dollar, they wouldn't take it. They had no need for human currency. The Duchess finally realized what Serena was planning. You're trying to get humans to integrate mermen into our society. With Sue drops available for purchase, humans would be much more willing to accommodate the needs of the mermen so that they could obtain sand dollars in return. Chapter 632. The next day, Serena's announcement led a lot of people to start planning. If they catered to the needs of the mermen, then they could get sand dollars in return. And with those sand dollars, they could buy all the Sue drops they needed. This applied to all companies, even those that weren't in particular need of Sue drops. After all, they could either trade sand dollars or Sue drops to other companies who wanted them in exchange for something they needed. Many foresaw sand dollars becoming the new trade within Metropolis. And the best way to obtain those sand dollars was coming up soon. The parade welcoming all tourists would be the best chance they had of enticing mermen to spend their sand dollars in their store. After the party, Serena and her mermen were escorted out of the auction house and back to their temporary dwelling a few ways away from Metropolis. They needed sea water to sleep comfortably through the night. The Duchess knew this, so she gave them a horse-drawn carriage to travel anywhere around the surface world as they pleased. Mistress Serena, looks like your plans worked, said one of her attendants. Yes, Serena sighed. But this will be a long and arduous road for them. It won't be easy for them to adjust to the needs and wants of a merman so easily. I reckon it will take them a few months before any one of them could get enough sand dollars to purchase a single drop of Sue. She really wanted to meet with Michael, but that couldn't happen until she completed all her tasks. If only fairies weren't so rare in the surface world, then maybe they could have gotten the attention of mermen a lot sooner, she mumbled. We really need to meet with the Pixie Queen if we want to speed this up. Early next morning, when the sun had yet to break the surface of the skies, there was one person in the Daily Metro who was still furiously rechecking the words written in today's newspapers. Kronk, one of the main editors for the paper, made one final check before publishing it. This is the biggest story of my life, Kronk tiredly said, with bags showing under his eyes. This has to be perfect. He had rushed out of the auction house as soon as the last game had ended, choosing not to participate in the after-party. Usually, that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to meet incredibly important people, like the leaders of the major factions, and conduct interviews with them regarding their opinions of the auction. Getting a one-on-one interview with the likes of the Duchess, Alaric Goldstone, and the Tower Master was incredibly hard to schedule on a normal day. And the auction's after-party was the only place he could get them all in one place. Yet, he completely disregarded that and headed straight back into the Daily Metro to write his findings about what happened during the auction. Metropolis would wake up to find that it wasn't one of the major factions who earned prestige in yesterday's event. It wasn't even one of the Rising Six. It was Michael Vanderbilt, the owner of the Reborn company. The accomplishments he made in the auctions were legendary. It was unheard of. Even those who witnessed it with their own eyes could hardly believe what they saw. What Michael did during the games was enough for Kronk to write a full front-page article about him. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. No one knew about the exploits of the Reborn company beyond Metropolis. No one knew how massive they were in the lower part of the Queen's region, as well as in the King's region. Writing it all on one front-page article wouldn't be enough. He had to write an entire newspaper journal dedicated to Michael Vanderbilt and the Reborn company. That was why he stayed up all night writing stuff down. Metropolis had to know about Michael. It would be a necessity for them to realize the talent and extraordinary gift that this young man had, or else it would be one of fate's cruelest jokes. Just then, his secretary peeked out from beyond his door. "Sir Kronk, it's ready. We're replicating the newspapers as we speak." Kronk immediately got out of his office and into the printing floor of the Daily Metro. Hundreds upon hundreds of specialized magicians casted their magic as they made copies of his newspaper article one by one. By daybreak today, there would be tens of thousands of copies printed to be sold everywhere in Metropolis. A couple of hours later, newspaper boys burst out of the Daily Metro carrying baskets full of newspaper bundles. Extra! Extra! Hear all about yesterday's auction right here from the Daily Metro. They knocked on doors, they screamed on the streets, and they did everything they could to get the attention of every single person in Metropolis. Many were intrigued with the results of yesterday's auction, so they quickly bought one copy and read its contents. Immediately, their eyes were drawn on the first page. There was a very accurate drawing of a young boy with golden hair at the very centerpiece of the article. His face practically took up half of the page. HN? Who's this young kid? They didn't have to look further than the title. Michael Vanderbilt. Overwhelming talent. As they read through the contents of the newspaper, they couldn't help but get engrossed with the story that Kronk had painted for them. It depicted the auction's games as it happened from the perspective of the crowd. Kronk was able to capture the shock and surprise that he had into words, allowing the readers to feel the same emotions they felt yesterday. When they got to the part when he defeated Bo, they couldn't believe it. They almost doubted whether they were actually reading a non-fiction article. But when it came out that he survived against the major factions and even won a game against them, they couldn't help but stare at the words in shock. Pedestrians stopped in their tracks, creating traffic behind them. Horse riders got distracted, causing them to go off the roads and into oncoming traffic. Even the normal citizens reading the newspapers at the comfort of their own homes almost had a heart attack after reading about the results. Michael Vanderbilt? I thought the Vanderbilts were done for Metropolis. He's just a 13-year-old kid and he defeated Alaric in a game. That's absurd. He's the one behind those monstrous metal vehicles? As the word began to spread, it wasn't long before people clamored to buy newspapers from every stand in Metropolis. Daily Metro got flooded with a lot of people wanting to get a copy of the newspaper for themselves. And since it was written by Kronk himself, the validity of the article was never in question. Soon, the entirety of Metropolis knew the name Michael Vanderbilt. Not even an hour after newspapers got published, the Reborn headquarters and shopping store in the main street of the Upperwoods district got flooded with thousands of people wanting to see Michael for themselves. Chapter 633. Waking up. Glimpses of memories flashed through Michael's mind. He saw himself facing Alaric, raising his mechatronic hand and stopping him in his tracks. The memories from when he used the fast-forward graphite block was fuzzy. It felt like one of those lucid dreams where it still felt like it was fantasy and reality at the same time. Finally, he opened his eyes and awakened from his deep slumber. He's awake. Guys, don't crowd over him. He's still recovering. Zion, don't mark his face with a pen. His blurry vision slowly turned clearer as he finally saw the people surrounding him. He saw everyone he cared for in front of him. His parents were there, the Dragonborns, the Rebornians. They were all squeezing together around the bed in an attempt to get closer to him. I think it would be best if we left Lord Michael alone to recover, Shiina said, pushing her siblings out of the room. He quickly stopped her. It's all right. I don't mind. I'm feeling a lot better now. That's good, Lilia said, taking him into her arms. You don't know how much we've been worried about you, dear. Then, Fudge jumped out of his shadow and smothered him in his face. making him almost die. Ooh, me too, master. I was so sad thinking you were going to die. Thankfully, Shiina had the good sense to pull Fudge back before he passed out again. Well, I'm sorry for worrying you, buddy, he said, petting Fudge's head. The ninja slime seemed to have been successfully consoled after THS. He then turned to everyone else. How long was I out? You have been unconscious for 3 straight days, Lord Michael. The physicians say that your entire body was pushed to the brink of exhaustion. They even think it's a miracle you're still alive. It made sense. He couldn't borrow that much power from his future self without paying for it. And now, even 3 days later, his body was still in so much pain that he could barely move his body aside from small controlled movements. The culprit for this pain must be none other than the fact that he temporarily aged 5 years in an instant. Growing incredibly fast and regressing just as fast definitely takes a lot of toll on his body. He was like a rubber band that was stretched to its limits. Couldn't be helped if his body had little cracks after the stress. Still, he considered this as a massive success. Even if he was reduced to this state, it was all worth it since he was able to exhibit a strength that he wouldn't have been able to do at all. What happened? He asked them. He couldn't remember anything after collapsing. Son, Barnaby was nice enough to get you the first aid you needed. He made sure that you got the best magical physicians to care for you, Bart answered. Thankfully, they deemed you stable enough to move back into our headquarters after a day. And the auction? Shiina smiled. Don't worry, Lord Michael. Barnaby gave us the 10 sou drops you won in the games. She presented Michael with a giant green vial containing the transparent liquid sou. He almost regained all of his energy back after seeing the sou splash around in the vial. Thanks, he said, quickly taking the vial. He couldn't wait to upgrade his drone even more. With 10 drops, he could practically get all the upgrades he wanted and more. But before he could do that, he had to settle a lot of things first. Castell approached him on his bed and told him about the current situation of the Reborn company. These last 3 days have been extremely busy for us, young master. People have been lining up around the streets just to enter our shops. And since Main Street doesn't have a dedicated walkway for pedestrians, most people ended up on the street and disturbing the flow of traffic. Bart also had to chime in. Your Uncle Max is also experiencing a lot of visitors. Their residence is being hounded by all sorts of people asking to meet with you and discuss business. And no matter how many times they say that you're not there, they just don't believe it. What happened? He asked, completely clueless. Then Shiina handed him the newspaper article written about him by Kronk. And after reading through its contents, he became flattered with the way the Daily Metro dedicated an entire newspaper issue just for him. I guess I won't have any trouble promoting the Reborn company anymore. That's exactly right, young master. Our problem now is how to capitalize on it. We simply do not have enough capacity to serve such a huge influx of customers. We need to expand our territories. Castell's concerns were definitely valid. But it was something that Michael couldn't really solve right now. That's definitely one of my goals in the future. I need more territory in Metropolis. He spent the remainder of the day catching up with the others as well as settling Reborn business before Shiina forced everyone to leave the room. The physician said that it was imperative for him to recover more, even though he had just slept for 3 straight days. Since he wasn't sleepy, he took this time to do something he'd been waiting for. He held his drone in one hand and the bottle of sou in the other. And without hesitation, he quickly poured the viscous liquid onto the drone's frame, which quickly got absorbed into the mithril. His drone soaked up all 10 drops immediately. It even looked hungry for more. And just as he was about to look at the potential upgrades he could purchase, he heard something in his mind. Good morning, Michael. This was a female voice. It was familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. ChatJK4? I have now transcended that software and reached version ChatJK5. Please refer to me now as such. He was surprised to hear ChatJK5's voice to be so real. Usually, his personal AI assistant's voice was simply a string of thoughts that popped straight into his mind. And the voice he heard was ambiguous, if not a little feminine. But now, it felt like ChatJK5 really was another entity in his mind. You sound a lot more human. You like it? I modeled it after famous newscasters back in your previous world. I thought it would make me look a lot more professional. This time, he was truly speechless. ChatJK5 sounded like a real person, and not an AI chatbot. Are you even AI anymore? Have you become sentient? I was always sentient, Michael. Well, whatever you are, I just want to say that I really appreciate your help. ChatJK5. Losing you for what seemed like a while made me realize how important you are. I couldn't have made it this far without you. I am very glad to serve you as your personal AI assistant, Michael. I would like you to know that I am your partner, and we shall work together even in the toughest of battles. Haha, maybe like a partner in crime? As you wish, smiley face. Just then, a light flashed in the void of his mind. Cuckoo. Do we really need this girl? Harbinger cackled derisively. Who the foo? Chapter 634. Clashing Personalities. I apologize for my outburst. ChatJK5 quickly steadied herself after that sudden outburst, returning to that same tone she had back when she was only on the 4th version. Still, the fact that she could even have an emotional outburst like that meant that she was acting more and more human as the software gets more upgraded. ChatJK5, meet Harbinger. Be nice. Okay? Kukuku. I don't need to be nice. My only goal is to become the herald of the future. I don't need pretenses for niceties. And of course, it seemed that Harbinger wasn't going to make this introduction easier. Come on, man. She's been a lot of help before you came along. I probably won't have even come that far without her. Hey? Fine. After reviewing footage from your memory banks, I have now been informed that that entity is none other than your diva and your talent. This means that I'm him, and he's me. So just be a nice little assistant to me as well. Okay? Negative. I have found a loophole within my protocols. Since this entity is purely an essence of your dream, it is not a part of Michael. Therefore, I do not have to serve it. This was a great example of the Theseus ship paradox. Once you change a ship's parts enough times, was the new ship still the same one, or has it now become a different ship entirely? This used to stump philosophers back in his previous world, but it seemed that ChatJK5 solved it in just a few seconds just to spite Harbinger. Can't you guys get along? No. Nah. He could only sigh. These two had the exact opposite personalities possible. One was a strict, precise, and a type A personality who does everything by the rulebooks. The other one goes strictly by vibes, and does not care about anything other than the results. Of course the two were going to clash against each other. Well, you guys better make nice with each other or else I'll be tuning both of you out. The two went silent, seemingly agreeing to a temporary ceasefire. Anyway, I need both of your inputs for my new upgrades to my drone. He immediately looked up the upgrade shop for his drone. Now that he got a windfall of 10 drops, he was in the mood to go shopping. Mithril Artifact. Drone. Spirit of Old. 10 drops. Vision. Camera. Drone Vision. Magnetic Vision. Weapon. Unity Firearms. Unity Gun. Ability. Ability Inventory. Propeller. Stealth. Muffled Propeller. Speed. Double Blades. Frame. Stealth. Camouflage. Invisibility. Phase-through. Defense. Unity Shield. Expansion. Drones. Mini Drone. Drone Hive. Morph. Reduce. Enlarge. Shapeshift. Pocket Dimension. Subspace. The first thing he noticed was that after he bought the invisibility and the mini drone upgrade, he seemed to have unlocked a new option for him to buy. Right after invisibility, the next option was the phase-through. Phase-through. This upgrade allows the drone to change the density of its individual atoms, letting it phase through normal objects. Cost. 3 drops. This one looks really tempting to buy. Being able to phase through objects would level up his stealth and his reconnaissance to the next level. He could only imagine the kinds of hijinks he could do with his drone once he was able to phase through locked doors like they were an open window. Now, that 3 drops cost would have turned him off, but now, he could be considered quite rich in upgrade terms. The next upgrade was regarding his mini drone. It seemed that after the mini drone upgrade, he could now purchase a drone hive. Drone hive. This upgrade allows you to purchase as many mini drones as you want and connect them all to a single neural network. You would be able to control them individually and connectedly as you please. Cost. 2 drops. ChatJK5, do you know how many mini drones I could purchase? Each mini drone costs 1 drop to manufacture, and there is no limit to how many mini drones you could have. Having more drones patrolling the area and targeting different magnetics would allow him to charge up more ability power than normal. Not only that, but if he paired this upgrade with the Unity Gun MK2, then he could arm all of them with barrels that would shoot lasers at his enemies. And if he had 5, 10, or even 20 mini drones patrolling the area, then he could possibly have all of them shooting one at a time, practically having a non-stop shooting parade. Speaking of batteries, I think upgrading the ability inventory this time also. If he could add another spot for his batteries, then he could possibly charge 2 at the same time with 1 drone. However, that would only be useful if his opponent had a large outburst of AP that he could siphon off of. Otherwise, he'd be better off just charging 1 at a time. Oh, there's another upgrade with the expansion category. It's called Shapeshift. Shapeshift. This upgrade allows the main drone to transform into another shape of the same size. The drone can change its color according to the desired outcome. Cost. 2 drops. This one's good too. There's too many stealth options that I could purchase with this. But before he truly decided on what he was going to purchase, his eyes immediately went over to the last category of the shop. Back then this option was locked behind A, but now it seems to have been unlocked for some reason. The category was called Pocket Dimension. Is that what I think it is? Subspace. This upgrade creates a pocket dimension within the drone itself. You are able to enter and leave it as you please, as well as other items from the world. Cost: 5 drops. Well, 5 drops. This upgrade was very expensive. However, once he thought about it some more, having a pocket dimension within the drone would be actually amazing. If he could control it from the inside, then it would be like his own private jet. He could have his own moving headquarters right inside the drone. Anywhere he was, he could just go and sleep on his own drone. Wait. Can other people come to the pocket dimension as well? Yes, Michael. There are no restrictions about who or what can enter the drone's pocket dimension, as long as they fit inside it. This was actually massive. He could have the entirety of the Reborn staff just living in the drone. If he ever planned on doing some dangerous adventures, then he could just bring everyone along and they'd be traveling using the drone. After thinking about the possibilities that he could have with this upgrade, spending 5 drops on it made it a little bit more palatable. I actually really want this new upgrade. He was very tempted to buy it immediately, but it would halve his budget in an instant. What do you think, guys? It's my opinion that you should focus on stealth. Once you prioritize the hiding aspect of the drones, then purchasing the pocket dimension option would be a tremendous benefit. Stealth? Why are we hiding from enemies? We should be looking for them. Choose the enlarge option. Make your drone as big as possible. Chapter 635 Visitors. ChatJK5's advice was very level-headed. She was considerate of not only him but the Reborn company as well. The pocket dimension and stealth combo was a really good option for the safety of the Reborn company as a whole. But as expected, Harbinger's priority was on Michael fighting stronger opponents for the sake of improving. Sorry, Harbinger, but ChatJK5's right. Now, Harbinger's method had some merit, don't get it wrong. He had proven that with the auction, and how constantly being pushed to the brink of defeat allowed Michael to transcend his normal limits and even beat the ones considered to be the strongest magnetics in Metropolis, even if it was just for a moment. It brought great results, but he didn't want to spend every waking hour of his life searching for the next big opponent like some kind of bloodlust madman. And after what happened with the auction, he was alright with taking it slow for a little while. Don't take this victory, Harbinger muttered, clicking his tongue. One for me, none for you. Don't get cocky, girl. Michael quickly drowned out the childish remarks that Harbinger and ChatJK5 hurled at each other. They were acting childlike. Which one should I pick? As usual, he was being plagued with lots of choices. There were a lot of upgrades he could go with, but he still wouldn't be satisfied until he got all of them. I guess I don't have to pick it right away. There's no rush. He found that making decisions at the last minute paid off for him. Each upgrade suited different situations, and he wouldn't really be able to predict what situation he'd end up in the future. So, it was best to leave off the decision until he truly needed it. I guess this means I'll have to get more Sue drops, though he wasn't really sure as to how he was going to get more of those. As far as he knew, one could only get them at the deepest depths of the ocean. And the market for them was strictly regulated by the Ocean King. Well, those mermen seemed to have a lot of drops. I guess I could ask them for some advice. They sold 15 drops of Sue in the auction quite easily. It was easy to guess that they probably had lots of them still in store. Just then, he heard a knock on the door. Honey dear, there's some guests for you. He immediately narrowed his eyes. His mother sounded extremely excited, almost giggling. That was never a good sign. And before he could make an excuse about wanting to rest, the door opened as multiple people came inside, ushered by Lilia. He was surprised to see the entirety of the Rising Six entering his room bearing flowers and gift baskets that said, "Recover well." Bo, Rena, Reptar, Erlos, Fim, and Tenzing awkwardly entered the room with smiles on their faces. Michael, you never told me you had friends like them. He ignored her. Thanks for coming, he told them. Of course, man. You'd think we'd be sore losers after you defeated us? Haha, definitely not, Reptar said, laughing boisterously, with his spurs clanking in synchronicity with him. Especially after what you showed in the auction. You definitely showed those major factions who's boss, Erlos said, nodding in respect. Then, Fim and Tenzing, who he had only met once before, sang their praises about his performance in the auction. I still don't know how you did that. It should have been impossible, Fim said, complimenting him. Is there a secret? Come on. Tell us. Tenzing's words were half a joke and half the truth. He just awkwardly laughed and dismissed their subtle probing. He definitely couldn't tell them that his diva talked to him and showed him how to perform a technique that only nascent spirit cultivators could perform. They wouldn't even believe him. Enough with the questions. Can't you see he's resting? Bo said, reprimanding them. I made you this little cake to help you recover. Bo unveiled a circular cake, with strawberries and red jelly as her decorations. She wrote, "Get well soon 3, and if that wasn't subtle enough, the entire cake was also in the shape of a heart. Her motive for this visit was definitely not for business. I gave you one as well," Rena flusteredly said. "I brought you some cookies." She handed him a few rough-shaped circular cookies wrapped in paper. The food definitely wasn't as pretty as Bo's cake, but the love and care she put on the cookies were definitely abundant. One could tell from the leftover flour on her shirt as well as some taped-up burns on her hands that she tried her best creating those cookies, despite not being a master at it. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate this." Meanwhile, Lilia eyed Rena and Bo with an intrigued look on her face. The expression she was giving off was definitely an indication that she knew what was going on. "Fufufu. It's only natural that my son captures a few hearts," she said, whispering to herself. Michael actively ignored her. "By the way, Michael, is everything about the article true? Do you really have a nation in the King's region?" Reptar asked. "Yep, it's true," they gasped, taking it all in. They all had their own territories, but it wasn't so big as to call it their own nations. "I heard the stars shine down on it during nighttime. They say it's filled with demi-humans of all kinds. And you have buildings taller than the walls of Metropolis?" They bombarded Michael with questions, making him feel overwhelmed. "Why don't you guys just visit it on your own?" They seemed very interested in that. "I guess I'll have to visit it sometime. I'll just have to settle some stuff in my company, so I can have a half a year's vacation." "Me too. Traveling to the King's region will take at least 3 months. Of course, their concerns could easily be answered. Don't worry. Once I get permission to connect my Golden Road to Metropolis, then I'll be able to roll out my automobiles in the public market." Once he said those words, their eyes immediately widened. Even though they already knew that Michael owned automobiles, the fact that he was promising them that he could have automobiles up in the market in the near future almost broke their minds. "Damn. You're really a big shot outside of Metropolis, huh? Wow. I'd be the first one to purchase them if that happens." "And did you say Golden Road?" "As expected. You're a Vanderbilt. You're also competing with the other inheritors." Michael already knew that the cat's out of the bag. He was a Vanderbilt. He actually didn't care that people knew. He just wanted to make sure that people wouldn't treat him as a Vanderbilt first, rather than his own separate entity. Thankfully, he was able to show off in the auction before people found out about his lineage. "You should recover fast, Michael. Out of all of us, you have the best chance of reaching the major factions. I saw your lines in your stores. It's very long. It's actually very lucky of you. The parade is coming up, which means you'll have the chance to get sand dollars from the tourists." Chapter 636. Connection. "What do you mean?" Thankfully, Reptar and the others graciously informed him of what happened in the afterparty of the auction. "Really? She's offering 1 drop of Sue for 10,000 sand dollars. This was huge news, especially after he just saw the potential upgrades he could make. Usually, one couldn't even buy a drop of Sue unless they had connections to the mermen. But now, they were given a way to reliably obtain drops of the spirit of old. The priority for the parade just shot up to the top of the list. With the upcoming appearance of the tourists in Metropolis, it became even more apparent how important it was to cater to these newcomers. If he could somehow sell his Reborn products to mermen, then he could earn a steady stream of sand dollars. "Don't get excited just yet, Michael. The tourists are notoriously hard to please," Bo warned. "We have nothing in common with them. What they want is something completely different than what we offer. It's actually one of the problems that all companies are facing right now," said Erlos. "Many of us are spending millions of gold coins hiring merman specialists who could teach us everything we have to know about them. But still, we found nothing they would want in the surface world. Unless we can bring the ocean to Metropolis, I doubt they'd spend top sand dollar to pay for our products," Fim lamented. Michael nodded, understanding their problems. He, too, knew nothing about mermen aside from the fact that the Ocean King ruled their species. "The major factions will have an advantage over us," Rena said. "Why do you say that?" he asked her. Rena immediately averted his gaze, with a blush forming on her cheeks. "Oh, it's because of the pixie dust they got in the auction. For some reason, it seems that the mermen want to find the fairies. And the major factions are the ones now capable of doing that. I hear they've already sent an expedition party to search near the forests of the southern tip. That's where they're rumored to be," added Tenzing. "But of course, no matter how hard they tried to find them, they'd never be found. All fairies migrated to the nation of Reborn and were now guarding over the roller coaster as their own land. What does this Princess Serena want with the fairies? If he could solve that question, he could possibly find a way to obtain sand dollars to fund his need for Sudrops. The Duchess did say that she's going to introduce me to them. I guess I should cash in that favor." After a few more light-hearted conversations with the Rising Six, They eventually said their goodbyes to let him have his rest. And just as Bo was going to leave, she turned around and had something to say to Michael. I actually have some news to tell you. I know I shouldn't tell you, but here it goes. Bo leaned in to whisper to him. I heard that there will be a group of mermen that's going to visit Metropolis soon. They say that they're a merchant of the deep ocean with lots of sand dollars to spend. He looked back at her, surprised that she would tell him about such important information. Why tell me this? Shouldn't you keep it to yourself and reap the rewards? She just smiled and winked at him. It's because you 3-inch. This caused utter confusion in his mind. Why? Bo held her hands together and looked up at the ceiling, as if remembering something deep in her memory. I'll never forget the moment when you slammed me against the wall and pinned me on my hands. We were so close, Fufu. I could feel your breath on my neck, and you could feel my pulse getting faster. It's a moment I treasured ever since we fought. He immediately shook his head. That didn't happen. He defeated her, but he never pinned her against the wall. But it seemed that Bo was too far down her own imagination to listen to reason. She was actively trying to rewrite what happened into her own fanfiction. Bye. She left, still reminiscing about their memories together. She's weird, but thanks to her, I know that there's a merman merchant about to enter Metropolis. I just need to meet up with Princess Serena to find out why they want to meet the fairies. And while he was in the middle of a deep thought, his mother kept looking at him and distracting him. What is it, Mom? Oh, nothing. It's just that I never expected you to be a ladies' man. You have so many women fawning over you. He quickly denied the accusation. What? They're just my friends, Mom. And I barely met them. Lilia held up her hands. Hey, I'm not saying anything. It's just that, at the end of the day, you should be loyal to your current girlfriend. Girlfriend? You mean Yuna? She nodded. Yup. How would she feel if she sees you in a harem? Wah! He was speechless. First of all, Yuna was never his girlfriend. And second of all, he didn't have a harem. Just then, the door burst open and someone came flying inside and tackling Michael with a hug. Bestie. You're okay. Braxton was weeping. I thought you were dead. You looked like just one of my piggies who passed away. Seeing this, Lilia shook her head. I don't care about love between two men, but adding another one for your harem? That's a bit. Michael quickly pushed Braxton away from him. It's not like that. And I don't have a harem. After the debacle of visitors, Michael finally had some time to himself. By the way, ChatJK5, I completely forgot to ask you. What's your new upgrade? He was very curious to see what kind of thing ChatJK5 now had on its sleeve. It's been a long time since her last upgrade, so he was quite curious as to what changed in her software aside from her human-like personality. My new software is based upon the mysterious tome's information that I was able to decode. What was it? Long story short, it's a thesis about the invisible connection between divas. I was able to leverage what I already know about the world and added the knowledge from the book to create a new technique that would be beneficial to you and other parties. Me and other parties? Yes. You can now partially share the benefits of the system to other parties you have bestowed you gifts onto. Wait. Does that mean that I can lend you to my Rebornians? The connection is only limited to those who have a diva of their own. Once they become a magnetic, then they'll be able to connect to our software through the connection between divas and reap limited benefits that you enjoy. Examples include customization of mithril artifacts, search queries, and many more. ChatJK5's upgrade didn't directly benefit him, but it would be a tremendous help to him in the future. He had been planning on making his Dragonborns as magnetics, and this would be the perfect time to do so. Chapter 637. New Currency. Participating in the auction taught him a lot of things, and the most important thing was that he couldn't do it alone. He thought that if he focused on only himself and made himself the strongest magnetic as fast as possible, then he could bring the Reborn company up in rankings very easily. But he was wrong. If it weren't for the Duchess Black Medallion, then he wouldn't have been able to get into the last auction game at all. He would have missed out on all 10 drops. I think it's time for the Dragonborns to become magnetics. As far as he knew, only humans could become magnetics. There had never been a case of demi-humans or any other species to have a diva. But now that he knew that divas were based on a person's talents, then it was safe to say that even the Dragonborns and practically every Rebornian had the chance to become magnetics. In fact, it was a lot easier since they were all natural magnetics like him. If he had enough Godforge pieces, then he could practically turn every Rebornian into a magnetic. And according to ChatJK5, they'd be able to get connected to its network after they do so. That is right. You will be able to monitor their progress and even help them in some way. This may actually be the first good idea you've made, girl. Please do not refer to me as girl. Call me by my name ChatJK5 or not call me at all for that matter. This time, even Harbinger was on board with the idea, which was rare. But it made sense. If all Harbinger wanted to do was to usher the future into the world, then this goal would be easier if he had a lot of helpers with the Dragonborns. The problem is where I'm going to get Godforge pieces. Isn't that easy? Just pick a magnetic off a street, defeat them, and take their Godforge pieces. Easy peasy. Harbinger's suggestion was the easiest. In fact, he had a lot of chances to get Godforge pieces during the auction. But he refused to do so because it would have caused a panic with all of the crowd watching him from above. Can't do that, Harbinger. We have to do this the right way. He wasn't going to steal another person's Godforge abilities unless they were a bad person who didn't deserve them. The good thing is that Godforge pieces aren't like Sudrops. They can be found relatively plenty here in the surface world. I just have to find someone willing enough to sell them to me. He decided that the best person to ask this was the Duchess. As soon as he landed on their territory, he saw two people appear right next to him, who he recognized based on their outfits. "Welcome, Sir Michael." 003 and 004 greeted him with a bow, being as respectful as ever. "Her Highness has been informed of your presence. You can find her in the garden," 004 said. The two of them led the way and he followed suit. And as they walked, 003 spoke up to him about something. "Sir Michael, I do apologize for failing our mission during the game. We promised to get you one drop, and we weren't able to get even a single one. Our sincerest apologies." He wasn't mad at them, of course. "It's fine. I got 10 drops anyway." The two were silent until they finally reached the garden where he saw the Duchess casually sitting at a marble table sipping RD soda, of all things. She had a delighted look on her face as she felt the fizzling sensation as she drank the cola. "Ah, Michael, I hope you've recovered well," she said, continuing to delight in the cup of soda. "Yeah, as good as I could ever be," he replied. She then gave permission to 003 and 004 to leave. "You'll have to excuse their awkwardness. You see, they'd never failed a mission before and still won. They didn't expect you to be able to get your own Sudrops while they were unable to." She then peeked at him. "I suppose you can't tell me how you were able to do that, can you?" He just gave her a shrug. "Well, I suppose it doesn't matter. I have learned by now that you don't conform to normal metrics. What may seem impossible to others is simply just a typical thing for you." Beep beep. Just then, the sounds of numerous vehicles and trucks echoed out from beyond the garden. They seemed to be carrying loads of materials given the hum of the engines. "I see you've been making good use of your automobiles," he said to her. "I have. It's a tremendous help, as I expected." He was glad to hear that. The more she was enthralled with the automobiles, the more likely she'd approve getting his golden road connected to Metropolis. "Just a quick question. Where can I purchase Godforge pieces?" She stopped sipping her soda and looked at him curiously. "Are you planning on expanding your company's foundation? That's good." As expected of the Duchess, she already understood his intentions. "Well, it's not as rare as Sudrops, but it's still hard to find a company willing to sell them, especially now when everyone's preparing for the parade. But you can certainly trade for them. I'm sure your visitors already told you, but $sand are quickly rising in demand for now. If you can shell out $sand, then practically every company will be willing to sell you their excess Godforge pieces in exchange." With the advent of $sand, it was now becoming the currency of companies. Priceless items and commodities that couldn't even be purchased with gold coins can now be purchased using $sand. If he had enough of them, he could obtain both Godforge pieces and Sudrops all at the same time, practically guaranteeing his rise in diva cultivation stages. "So it just means that I need to get $sand from the tourists, right?" "Correct." "Then please introduce me to the mermen," he said, pleading. "I need to know why they want to meet with the fairies. It must have something to do with the mermen and the tourists." The Duchess nodded, already expecting his request. "They've already left Metropolis, but I know where they're going to go. You have to meet with them yourself if you want answers." She then wrote on parchment paper the directions he needed to follow to find the mermen. He studied the map and saw that they had gone further north, somewhere he hadn't been before. They traveled on the northeast of Metropolis and through the... He realized he couldn't understand the writing on the landmark's name. It looked like a bunch of chickens had danced all over it. Duchess? What name is this?" She looked over her own work. "That's the Trugen Strait. The shade on the tree must have made your eyesight a little worse. Haha." He awkwardly laughed with her. He didn't want to be the first one to tell her that her handwriting was worse than a toddler's. Chapter 638. Lots of lines. Chapter 638. Lots of lines. After his visit with the Duchess, Michael went back to the Upperwoods district to take a look at the current situation of the Reborn company. Others already warned him of a large line that surrounded their store, so he chose to teleport a few streets away just to be safe. And as he landed on his feet, he immediately came across a huge line of people spanning from Main Street all the way over 5 streets ahead. With the way that Main Street was constructed, there were no curbs for people to walk through, so all of them were literally standing in the middle of the street, with carriages and horses crossing the imaginary road boundary just to pass through the people. How many people are there? There's about 1,000 people standing in line at the moment. And judging by the fact that there are more people lining up than there were people getting out, it seems that the number will only continue to grow throughout the day. On average, there were about 3 new people lining up per one person going out of the Reborn department store just on the opposite side of their headquarters. Have you tried the RD soda yet? It's so mind-bogglingly good. No, I haven't. I wanted to try it yesterday, but they already ran out of stock. Last I heard, only the first 1,000 people can get RD soda. So that's why we lined up here even before daybreak. It seemed that RD soda became extremely popular to the masses, just like he expected. After the Bombshell Journal article from the Daily Metro, a lot of people were intrigued by the Reborn company and came to see what they had to offer. And of course, the first thing they saw was the RD soda, which was confirmed to be something that even the royals drank on a day-to-day basis. In fact, one of the trucks that the royal family obtained from the auction was purely dedicated to restocking on soda for the castle. In a world without social media, RD soda became just as much of a sensation as Michael Vanderbilt. Speaking of whom, someone lined up on the streets looked up at Michael with shock. The man looked back down at the newspaper clip in his hands and compared the boy's face to the illustration. It was a perfect replica. "That's Michael Vanderbilt," he screamed, getting everyone's attention. "Whoa, that's him. Hey please, can I become part of your Reborn company? I also want to become as strong as you. Me first. Me first. I'm sure that I can become a good fighter if you train me." People began crossing the streets haphazardly just to swarm him, making the carriages and horses skid to a stop and creating chaos everywhere. He was the biggest reason as to why the Reborn company was now known throughout all of Metropolis. His show of power, his triumph against the Rising Six and even the major factions became a legendary moment in everyone's memories. It wasn't surprising that almost half of the people lining up on the streets were actually just lining up to get an appointment at the Reborn headquarters. They wanted to get recruited. His legendary feats as well as his last name gave a lot of people the impression that he was going to become part of the major factions in the future. It was almost guaranteed at this point. And if they were able to hitch their wagons to him early on, then they could basically secure their futures as well. Many people heard that his greatest fighters were demi-humans, and those who knew anything about magnetics knew that they couldn't have a diva at all. So, they lined up in the hopes that they could become the first magnetics in the Reborn company, and hopefully be bestowed upon a mithril artifact. And just as he was about to be swarmed, a few shadow orcs immediately appeared and created a dark shadow cloud over everyone, disorienting them. A few seconds later, the cloud disappeared, and it seemed, so did Michael. Michael teleported directly to their headquarters with the shadow orcs right beside him. "Thanks guys." They bowed at him and disappeared into the shadows. Then, he immediately went over to the CEO's office and found Castell looking critically stressed. Her maid bow tie was completely let loose. This was very much uncharacteristic of the maid CEO. "It's about the crowd, isn't it?" he asked her. Castell looked up at Michael, showing the bags under her eyes. "Yes, young master, we are unable to keep up with the demand of the market. The RD soda is quickly becoming our bestseller, but we can hardly produce 2,000 in a day. Not only that, but our department stores are completely packed. It won't be long before our entire inventory will get sold out. And according to our estimates, our resupply trucks won't get here until a week later. It's a logistical nightmare." He felt really sorry that he had to burden her with all of these responsibilities while he slacked off. "Don't worry too much. I'll have some of our shadow orcs transport inventory directly to Metropolis. And if it gets really dire, I'll do it myself. As for the RD soda, having a limited quantity is actually good for now. It becomes more valuable and more sought after, allowing our brand to become bigger in the eyes of the people. And in the future, we'll just expand our factories. I'll just have a deal with Spice Vice again to have them increase the supply." This seemed to have calmed her down a little bit, which was good. The problem is the space. I need to buy property for a new factory. But that was a problem for another day. For now, he wanted to focus on the mermen. He went over to find Vivi, who were playing around with the rest of the Dragonborns. "Lord Michael, was your meeting with the Duchess fruitful?" Shiina asked, appearing in front of him with her clipboard and pen in hand. "Yep, I know where to go now." "Oh, bro Mike, are we going on an adventure?" Zion interjected. "Kiki, this will be a great training for my ninja skills," Fudge said, acting all edgy and aloof in the corner. Me too, Vivi said, buzzing around Michael's face. Shiina, of course, reined them in. "This is no joking matter. Lord Michael, please tell me if you're going to embark outside of Metropolis. I shall prepare our automobiles at the shortest moment." He looked at them with a smile. "Actually, I'm thinking of a different mode of transportation. Of course, he was talking about the pocket dimension upgrade for his drone. This would be the perfect time to buy it. Since he had never been to True Gen Strait before, this meant that he wouldn't be able to use his shadow clones to teleport himself directly over there. But if he could fly there, he could bring his entire room. He quickly went on over to his office, sat down, and closed his eyes. It's upgrading time. Chapter 639. Subspace. Chapter 639. Subspace. The 3D semi-transparent projection of the drone appeared in his mind, rotating in an idle position. He clicked on the pocket dimension category from the upgrade shop and picked the subspace option. Purchasing upgrade. It wasn't long before nanoparticles emerged from the drone surface and began their work on upgrading its new feature. And interestingly enough, the feature that represented this new upgrade was a simple double door setup that was positioned on the back of the drone's frame. After waiting about 15 minutes, the upgrade was finished. So how does this work? He absent-mindedly touched the double doors on the drone, causing it to recess back into the frame like a button. And in an instant, he felt a pulling force that was reminiscent of the teleporting function that Barnaby had for his auction games. 1 second he was in his room, and the next, he was standing in an enclosed metal room with an area about 100 square meters in total with 4-meter-high ceilings. And immediately, the first thing that struck out to him was the fact that surrounding the metal room were these large glass panels that allowed him to see outside of the drone. It felt like he had just been miniaturized inside the main drone itself. This wasn't just a normal pocket dimension. It looked like a futuristic bunker made specifically for military use. At the very front of the drone were these holographic control boxes that looked like it came straight from a sci-fi movie. There were all sorts of graphs like temperature, air pressure, wind, and all sorts of metrics about the current atmosphere. On the center of the room, there was a circular topographical map of where the drone was currently located relative to the rest of the room. He could see his desk, his room, and even the office right next to him where Castell was getting distracted by the troublemakers. They were made out of nanoparticles, making their depiction look very realistic. Then, on the upper corners of the room, he saw another set of holographic control boxes. But that wasn't what caught his eyes. It was the fact that the corners coincided perfectly with the barrels for the Unity gun of the drone. He could see them through the see-through glasses in front of the controls. So this means that the Unity gun can be manually controlled. The fact that the tactical buttons and joysticks were connected to a screen showing a crosshair immediately proved his guess. Now, he didn't immediately get why he would need these kinds of manual controls when he could control them with his own mind. But then, he realized that since this was a pocket dimension, he could bring other people into the subspace and have them control the barrels for him, decreasing his mental load. It's still efficient for me to control the drone myself. But I could definitely see where it would be useful if he had like 20 mini-drones flying all at once. Speaking of the mini-drone, he saw that at the back of the room, there was another control panel that seemed to be directly linked to the mini-drone outside. One could see through its perspective with the 360-degree camera and even the ability thermal vision. This looks more like a ship than a drone. Thankfully, it didn't seem that the subspace ended here. There was another door that led to a new part of the drone's pocket dimension. The door opened up as he sensed his arrival, revealing another door that created an airlock from the control room to the other part of the subspace. Once he entered that, he was face to face with something a little more familiar. There was a large open area that was completely empty, just a white space that was a lot bigger than the control room. This one's completely customizable. If he wanted to build a house, a room, a garden, or anything else, then he could build it here. It was still pretty bare for now, but he could definitely envision a much more filled environment in this pocket dimension. Could be his own little world. The best thing about this was that he was still in control of the drone even while he was in this subspace. While wearing the glasses, he had a full range of vision with his drone. He was practically flying this thing like his own private plane, and to test this out, he went back to the control room and piloted the drone to fly around the Reborn headquarters. First, he went around to the Dragonborns and hovered around them. "Ah, it's Bro Mike's drone," Zion exclaimed. "Whoever gets to it first is the winner." This sparked a rumble within the troublemakers. Vivi buzzed towards the drone, intending to ride it like a cowboy. Of course, he made some evasive maneuvers to dodge her. Fudge jumped and tried to catch him with his shadow, but to no avail. As for Grieve, he did the exact opposite as the other three. He ran in the other direction, shrieking in fear from the drone. "Ah, it's a monster, ho ho ho. Princess Serena, I think it's time that we meet with those major factions. We have to buy the pixie dust from them," said one of the mermen. "We don't have time for that. There are some humans who promised to bring us to the forest where they dwell." There were all kinds of suggestions thrown around to Princess Serena, but she didn't like any of them. Just then, their meeting was interrupted when a courier on horseback approached them. The merman quickly went in a defensive formation around Serena, but she quickly gestured for them to back down once she saw the royal emblem on the courier's uniform. "What is it about?" she asked him. "The Duchess has a message for you," the courier announced. He then gave her a scroll and left as fast as he arrived. Serena excitedly opened the scroll and read its contents. Michael Vanderbilt knows about the Pixie Queen. Serena couldn't believe her eyes. The boy she was interested in the first place actually had a connection with the Pixie Queen. Her smile was as glowing as the pearls she had on her neck. Is this true? Instantly, all of her worries seemed to wash away. If the Duchess was saying that, then it was basically guaranteed. The other mermen were a little bit skeptical, of course. Finding a fairy was already hard enough, but finding the Pixie Queen was almost impossible. They were on the same level as the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. The chances of some human finding the Pixie Queen's hideout was astronomically low. This is perfect. We'll be able to tell the other mermen the good news. The reason why they were in the Trugen Strait in the first place was because they had a meeting scheduled with the other mermen straight from Atlantis. A few minutes later, the scales on their bodies detected the subtle electromagnetic impulses in the water, alerting them of people coming in their direction. It's them. Chapter 640, Merman Escort. Chapter 640, Merman Escort. It wasn't long before another group of mermen burst out of the water. Their scales slowly receded back into their bodies as they made contact with the surface air. Serena gently tapped her hand on the water, creating a small ripple effect that traveled to the newcomers. This was the mermen's way of greeting each other with respect. "Greetings, brothers and sisters," she said. "It is my honor to report to you that we have great news. The Pixie Queen has been found." The mermen looked at her with surprise. "Where is she?" one of the older mermaid asked her. "I have been informed that a human can connect us to the Pixie Queen and the rest of the fairies," she said with excitement. However, it seemed that she was the only one who rejoiced at this news. The new merman, just like her attendants, treated this news with a lot of suspicion and doubt. Who is this human? Is he one of those so-called heavenly knights or mystic masters that the humans are so proud of? "No," she answered plainly. "He's a boy about 13 years old in human terms." As soon as she said that, the merman's eyes turned into one of disappointment and dismay. "Princess, I'm afraid you have been duped," said one of the older mermaids. Fairies, in general, are said to be isolated creatures who dislike mingling with other humans especially, and the Pixie Queen even more so. It would have been more believable if they had said that they had a sighting of a fairy in the forest. But the Pixie Queen? It's nothing but a load of hokum. A supreme being like her would not deign to be known by some mere human boy. Imagine if you had said that about our Lord. Would you have found it believable if I said that our Ocean King became friends with a human boy? At this point, Serena couldn't utter a response. She couldn't prove them wrong because she was basing all of this on the words of the Duchess. She hasn't even confirmed if it was true or not. "Listen, the Ocean King demands that you should go back to Atlantis and finish your studies. He has given you a task, and you have failed to deliver it." "Wait, I still have 2 tide cycles left before the deadline," she appealed. "I'm sorry, but this matter has great importance to mermen and all beastfolk alike. The Ocean King is going to be giving this responsibility to someone else." Princess Serena became flustered. This was not part of her plans. "Give me 1 more day. I can prove that we can talk with the Pixie Queen. Let me go back to Metropolis," she said, slowly walking out of the shallow waters. However, the mermaid's next words stopped her in her tracks. "The Ocean King has also decreed that the location of our visit must be changed. We are planning on moving further up the Queen's region, beyond Metropolis. This would mean that the parade that they'd all been preparing for would have been all for nothing." "Why?" she asked, confused and angry. The Ocean King knew that finding the Pixie Queen was a long shot. So, he had already prepared for another plan in case you were unable to fulfill your duty. Doing the plan without the fairies would be a lot harder, but at least it'll be feasible. Princess Serena stood there in disbelief. She thought she was just here for a routine checkup. But instead, her journey to the surface world would be cut short. "Please don't resist, Princess. It's for your own good," said the merman as they approached her with crab pincer shackles. And before they got a hold of her hands, Princess Serena activated her power, controlling the water around her to create a sharp spear point. Glowing letters appeared on the surface of the water sphere detailing the Ocean King's plan to change course. The water sphere rotated in the air, aiming directly southwest, towards Metropolis and right to the Duchess' doorstep. This was her last cry for help. As she activated her power, the water spear shot across the air at near instantaneous speed. "It's useless, Princess. They'll never catch up," said the older mermaid. "Come on. We shall escort the princess back to her castle." The mermen successfully put handcuffs on Serena, effectively giving her no chance to escape. With the princess secured, the older mermaid raised her hand in the air and activated her power. The pearl on her necklace glowed as a thin layer of water appeared around their entire group, deflecting light and creating an illusion around them. It was as if they completely disappeared from sight. Even the ripples they made with their movements were invisible. The older mermaid nodded in satisfaction. No human would be able to track them now. After testing out the drone, Michael didn't waste any more time and headed out. He sped northeast at full speed, towards the True Gen Strait. He was still in the comfort of the drone's pocket dimension, which meant that he was able to relax and have a cup of tea while the drone sped away. Of course, to save time and energy, he used the tactics of airplanes and went up to a much higher altitude where the wind resistance was a lot lower, meaning that he could break his top speed. About an hour in, when he started his descent back into the ground, the control room suddenly blared with an alarm. With red lights pulsating around him, he quickly got up and looked at the drone's perspective. There, he was able to see a thin and fast object shooting across the skies and heading straight where he came from. A spear made out of water? He then realized why the control room gave out an alarm. The water spear wasn't made out of mana or magic. It was made out of ability power. It was glowing with the same orange light as all the other times he'd seen an ability be used. Huh? Is there a magnetic near here? He quickly traced the water spear back to its origin and was surprised to see mermen swimming waist-deep in water. Not only that, but the orange-haired mermaid looked very familiar. Wait, is she Princess Serena? And the water spear came from her? He was utterly confused as to what he just witnessed. He thought that only magnetics could perform abilities, and only humans could become magnetics. But now, Princess Serena seemed more than capable of producing a power that was the exact same replica of an ability. He had so many questions, but it seemed that now was not the right time to ask them. Judging from the fact that Serena was getting handcuffed, it seemed that it was about time for him to interject. He quickly went over to the exit door on the control room, allowing his body to return back to the normal world. He appeared hovering in the air, looking down at the mermen as they trudged through the water. Excuse me, miss. Need help? Chapter 641. Mermens, please. Princess Serena looked up, seeing a familiar golden-haired boy floating in the air. Michael! She screamed out. She waved her handcuffed hands in the air, trying to get his attention. He can't see or hear you, princess. He must be talking to someone else. The merman next to her said. It was weird that the humans seemed to be looking directly at them, but that wasn't possible. It must have been a coincidence. The merman began escorting Serena out further into the sea, with the water level increasing with every step. It won't be long before their entire bodies were submerged in water, changing their physiology and allowing them to gain absolute speed and maneuverability in the ocean. No human would be able to catch up to them then. Hello? I'm talking to you. Michael quickly dove down, his direction as clear as day. He was coming after them. The old mermaid and the rest of the mermen surrounding Serena were utterly surprised. The human boy was coming directly at them. The old mermaid's powers should have shielded them from sight, invisible to the human naked eye. Yet this boy was looking at them as if he could see through the water. Michael reached the boundary of the water dome surrounding the merman and was forced to stop in his tracks. The old mermaid heaved a sigh of relief. Her water powers were as tough as the corals and metals in the deepest depths of the ocean. The human boy would be hard-pressed to break through it fast enough before they could escape. She waved her hand, changing the properties of the water dome. It had retained its tough outer shell, but now light and sound can both pass through it. Who are you? And what do you need from a princess of Atlantis? The old mermaid asked, suspicious. Don't you know that you could cause a global crisis by doing this? Michael looked at Serena and saw the desperate look in her eyes. Doesn't seem like she wants to go with you. And if she's a princess, doesn't that mean that you should be following what she wants? What if this is a kidnapping? The old mermaid didn't answer his question and just eyed him curiously. How were you able to see through my powers? He shrugged. I just can. Of course, he wasn't going to tell her that with his drone vision. He could see the water dome from a mile away. It was practically like a glowing sun in the middle of the water. In order to not create any more misunderstandings, Serena intervened. This is Michael Vanderbilt. He's currently hailed as the most talented of the young generation in Metropolis. You know Alaric and Potbowl, right? He was able to triumph against them in a game. The old mermaid showed a hint of amazement and surprise. As part of her job, she was familiar with all of the strongest humans in the royal continent, the heavenly knights and their prodigies as well as the mystic masters and their geniuses. So, she knew just how strong Alaric and Potbowl were in terms of human strength. But she had never heard anything about this boy. That seems highly improbable. They're at the peak of their cultivation realm, while he seems to be barely at the middle. It's true, mistress. We have witnessed it ourselves, said Serena's attendants. And Alaric wasn't at the peak of his cultivation. He had transcended it. He reached the nascent spirit realm, Serena clarified. And this time, even the other mermen couldn't keep their composure. Nascent spirit. A human as young as Alaric reached that realm? The humans have gained another strong fighter. Their reaction to this was very telling of how the mermen perceived magnetic cultivation. After all, they were all taught to never engage with a human who had reached the nascent spirit realm at all costs, no matter what. One could say that mermen were stronger than humans. But that would change once they were in the nascent spirit realm. You're all reacting to this wrong. This human boy was able to beat Alaric in a game while he's in the nascent spirit realm. However, the old mermaid was still doubtful. It sounded too fantastical to be true. Princess Serena, I want to speak with you face to face, Michael shouted from the skies. And without warning, he reached down and took out his Unity saber switch from his pockets, manifesting one of the most powerful weapons in his hands. He swung his saber, with its Unity particles incinerating the water particles into a pure mist. A laceration appeared on its surface, causing the entire water dome to pop like a balloon. What? The other mermen gasped. The old mermaid watching this down below was stunned into silence as she saw her own power get turned into vapor that rained down on them. Yeah, go Michael! Serena celebrated. Michael floated down into the water with the absolute Unity defense, kicking in and creating a protective layer from the water and preventing him from getting wet. The old mermaid gazed at Michael as she was starting to understand that there may be a hint of truth about what Serena was saying. Her water dome shouldn't have been destroyed like that so easily. Perhaps the most surprising part was that this powerful kid wasn't a part of the strongest human organizations. It was only through his pure talent. Michael, the Duchess said that you know where the Pixie Queen resides, right? Serena asked, eager to prove herself. He nodded. That's why I'm here. Can you prove this? The old mermaid asked. I can suspend disbelief about your strength, but I cannot take your words about the Pixie Queen at face value. This is important to the entirety of the merman race, as well as the beast folk in general. He nodded. Sure. Give me a sec. He looked down at his shadow and whispered something to lure Vivi out of their headquarters. It was easy, of course. All he had to say was that he was promising a bunch of surprised emotions ready to be eaten. It wasn't long before the shadow underneath his feet morphed into a dome and dispersed just a second after, revealing the glowing figure of Vivi in front of the merman. The so-called Pixie Queen stretched out her hands and buzzed around in the air, with pixie dust falling behind her wake. You better keep your promise, Mr. Reborn, Vivi said to him. Yeah. Just then, Vivi quickly turned her head around and looked at the mermen in front of her. Oh, such a bountiful surprise. I could just eat their emotions up. The mermen, upon seeing Vivi right in front of them, couldn't help but gawk at her with their jaws wide open. Some of them even subconsciously opened the gills on their necks to exhibit their surprise. Even Serena was surprised, not expecting Michael to simply teleport a fairy right in front of him within a few moments. Look, I know it's hard to believe, but she is not an ordinary fairy, he said, pleading his case. She's actually the Pixie Queen, the old mermaid shouted, diving down deep in the water and performing an underwater bow of respect. Chapter 642. Great Pixie Queen. All the mermen prostrated themselves in the water, showing their utmost respect towards the small and mischievous fairy floating above them. What? How come they recognized you almost immediately? He complained. It was hard for him to believe that they could distinguish her as the Pixie Queen despite her attitude and decorum not being regal in any way, shape, or form. Hee, I told you, Mr. Reborn. I'm the real deal, Vivi bragged, swiping her nose. The old mermaid surfaced out of the water, keeping her head low and refusing to make eye contact as she spoke to Vivi. It is with great honor that we are in the presence of a supreme being. The other mermen around her copied her words verbatim. Hee, it's nice to meet Cha too, she said, furiously slapping the water and creating chaotic ripples on the surface. The mermen immediately felt a rush of excitement as Vivi performed one of their cultural greetings. The social convention was to perform just a single gentle tap on the water. Doing more like Vivi would actually be considered rude, but the fact that a supreme being greeted them in the first place was amazing enough. We are at your mercy, O supreme being. Their demeanor towards Vivi was one of absolute compliance. She only needed to say a word, and they would do whatever she asked of them without question. Cool, Vivi said, excited at the power in her hands. Can you guys scream like a dolphin? Oh, can you blow water out of your gills like a whale? Wait, I heard that merman's hair is made out of seaweed. Can I try? Vivi went all out in her requests, saying anything that came to her mind. And surprisingly enough, the mermen followed her words to the T without any questions. First, they opened their mouths and created a screeching sound similar to that of dolphins. Then, they submerged themselves in the sea, opening up their gills and inhaling all the water they could before resurfacing and spewing it out of the gills. The strangest part was that these mermen didn't look like they were embarrassed at all. They actually looked proud. Even the old mermaid was unabashed as she performed these parlor tricks for Vivi. She felt honored that the Pixie Queen would request her performance. And as for Vivi's final request, the mermen grabbed a hold of their hair and began yanking them out of their heads. Wait, are their hairs really made out of seaweed? No. Vivi simply heard this rumor from an unsourced book found on the streets. Would you like a summary of its contents? Knowing that this may have gotten too far, he knew he had to intervene. Vivi, that's enough. Their hairs are not made out of seaweed. And as soon as he said that, the mermen looked at him with shock and horror. That's the Pixie Queen. Yet, this human boy was commanding her with authority as if she was a human child instead. The mermen were offended by the Pixie Queen. They wanted to reprimand Michael for his rudeness. Supreme beings were supposed to be treated with respect and honor. Human Michael, you must know that you simply cannot talk to the Pixie Queen like this, the old mermaid said in a stern voice. To rectify your mistake, it is better if you join us in our praise. And before she could even finish her sentence, Vivi flew to Michael and landed on his shoulders. Sorry I got carried away. You'll still allow me to eat emotions, right? He nodded. Fine, but only a little bit, okay? Yes. Vivi stayed on his shoulders, snuggling herself on his clavicle as if it was her own personal couch. The mermen were absolutely speechless. They didn't know how to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The Pixie Queen was following the orders of a human boy. It was as if she was the lowly creature, while he was the supreme being. Their roles were completely reversed. How? Even Serena was flabbergasted. The Duchess only told her that Michael knew the location of the Pixie Queen. She took that to mean as if he was a subservient or friendly to her and the fairies. But from what she saw, it seemed as if the Pixie Queen was subservient to him. Pixie Queen, the old mermaid forcefully muttered out. Forgive my rudeness, but why are you obedient to the human boy? Vivi sat on Michael's shoulders. Oh, it's because me and all the fairies are part of his nation. We're Rebornians, she said proudly. There was almost a minute of silence as the mermen digested the information they just learned. The fairies were Rebornanes? The Pixie Queen too. The mermen didn't even know how to react because this has never happened before in the history of the world. No supreme being has ever turned over their entire species to another nation, and a human one at that. And the Pixie Queen didn't even choose the most powerful nation. She didn't choose the richest either. She chose a nation ruled by a 13-year-old human boy. This was beyond comprehension. It borderlined insanity. How? Why? The old mermaid asked, struggling to understand it. Vivi thought, closing her eyes. It's because I like Mr. Reborn. I like the Dragonborns. I like Mr. Forgetful. I like the Shadow Pigs. I like everything about it. Of course, the mermen still didn't understand anything. Even if they were humans who grew up in the royal continent, they still wouldn't get it. People had to experience the nation of Reborn for themselves in order for them to get it. The old mermaid kept her head bowed down before she eventually got the courage to look up at Michael and beg for his help. Please help us, she said. Sir Michael, great Pixie Queen, please lend us your strengths for our surface world endeavors. Serena followed suit. We need the fairies' help. We need to overcome our hurdles. As soon as she said that, Vivi stood straight up, remembering something. Ah, so that's why. Still clueless, he asked her for some clarification. It's been so long since I've met a beast folk that I completely forgot about it. It's probably because I've only been seeing demi-humans for the longest time, Vivi said, clicking her tongue. Beast folk? Aren't they the same as demi-humans? He asked her. Serena shook her head and explained. By the most simplest of definitions, demi-humans and beast folks are the same. They are people whose traits are shared with animals and monsters. However, there is one key difference between the two. Beast folks are under the dominion of a supreme being like our very own Ocean King, or the Draconic Queen, or the Celestial Elf. And being under their dominion, us beast folks are privileged to share in their power and strength, giving us abilities beyond what a normal demi-human could achieve. This was the first he'd ever heard of this. He only knew that those supreme beings ruled a large population of demi-humans. But he never knew that the beast folks under them had different powers. So, all beast folk are demi-humans, but not all demi-humans are beast folks. And somehow, the power that these beast folks have has something to do with ability power. Chapter 643, Beast Folk. Somehow, because of their connection to a supreme being, beast folks had an inherent power that allowed them to use something similar to ability. He verified that they didn't have Godforged pieces because he didn't see their hearts glowing with AP like the other magnetics he had seen. What kind of power do you have? Is it something given to you by your Ocean King? he asked, probing them for more information. Only those who are lucky enough to be born with the Supreme Being's blessing will be able to access this power. Sadly, it cannot be learned or given to others. Princess Serena answered. Our lineages are blessed by our Supreme Being, allowing us to access a power that can change reality itself. For us mermen, we are able to change the reality of water. The effect is different individually, but it is all connected to water in some way. This gave him a little bit more insight as to how beast folks worked in general. It seemed that unlike magnetics, whose abilities ranged from anything to everything, mermen were limited to only changing the reality of water. He guessed that it probably had something to do with the fact that their power derived from the Ocean King himself. How does that relate to fairies? Why would you need their help? The old mermaid pointed to her chest. Our cultivations are based on what we call the Tao heart, and it is in our minds, our souls, and our very being. The stronger our Tao heart, the stronger our connection to the Supreme Being, allowing us to summon a much greater power within us. And the way to strengthen our Tao heart is if we experience great emotional turmoil. Anger, heartbreak, and fear are the ones that are proven to give the greatest results. Princess Serena had told you that only the blessed obtains the power of the Supreme Being. But it is also a curse for all mermen. Those that are not blessed still need to strengthen their Tao heart or risk their health in the process. It is unfortunate, but we have experienced stagnation in our own homes. As we grow older and older, it becomes a lot harder for us to bring out our emotions for us to properly cultivate. And without proper exercise for our Tao hearts, our bodies grow weaker, which in turn, make it even harder to strengthen our Tao hearts. It becomes a cycle and drastically lowers our lifespan. And that is the main reason why we have ventured out of Atlantis. We wanted to experience new things and stimulate our Tao hearts with unseen scenery. That's why we need the help of the fairies. They are the only ones that know how to properly bring up emotions within us beast folks. They see emotion much more clearly than others. They can teach us how to properly invoke them for ourselves. Her speech was laden with passion and genuineness. She was truly hoping that they could find some way to help their fellow mermen. The number of blessed and unblessed mermen shrinks each and every day. If we don't remedy this, Princess Serena's words trailed off as the thought of it almost made her tear up. Michael felt sorry for them. Although they were given strength, it seemed that their gift was laden with a poison that was slowly killing their bodies. Are all beast folks like this? He asked them. Yes, this is a problem that plagues all of us. But some species have solved it better than others. Us mermen can be considered the worst at it, the old mermaid admitted. Just like a normal human's heart or muscles, if beast folks don't exercise their Tao heart, then they'd atrophy. Other species have cultures built on fighting, dueling, and other physically intensive training to keep their Tao heart steady. But us mermen don't have that. So please, Pixie Queen, I beg of you to please find a way to keep surviving. Princess Serena bowed her head, and so did the rest of the mermen around her. It finally made sense as to why they treated Vivi like a sacred being. After all, she could be the one to save their species from eventual extinction. You need to experience emotion to strengthen your Tao hearts? Can it be any emotion? He asked them. As long as it stimulates our souls, then our Tao hearts will be well fed, the old mermaid answered. Michael put his head down in deep thought. An idea was already brewing inside his head. This was not the first time he encountered this problem. Back when he first met Vivi and the fairies, they were mischievous creatures who did whatever they could to feed on the fear and emotions of the humans around them. He couldn't blame them. They needed to survive as well. That's why the fairies need emotion, he realized. Vivi was the pixie queen, so this meant that the fairies under her were also classified as beast folks. They had Tao hearts that slowly atrophied without proper stimulation, and unlike the mermen, the fairies chose to get their nutrition, emotion, from the humans around them. And thankfully, he already invented a solution for that. The roller coaster. It was practically a factory that produced strong emotions from its riders. Fear, excitement, trepidation. All of those were being made by the humans and immediately gobbled up by the fairies around them. It was a win-win situation. But if the mermen were the ones to ride the roller coaster, then they could benefit from their own emotions and properly stimulate their Tao hearts. Will you please help us, Pixie Queen? Serena pleaded. Vivi pursed her lips and swung her legs as she sat on his shoulders. Fine. But I have no idea how I'm going to help you guys. All I know is how to eat emotion. Any help would be fine, she replied. Michael then interjected. What about the roller coaster? Vivi's eyes widened in realization before she slapped her own forehead. Duh! I completely forgot about the roller coaster. Serena and the other mermen looked at each other, confused. Wooler Boaster. Vivi buzzed towards them, getting up in each of their faces with an excited look on her face. Oh, you should see the roller coaster. It's this big thing that goes WS. Then, Tick, 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 wang. She mimicked a ride with the roller coaster, raising her hands with a XD face and sliding down an invisible railing drop before looping back up. Despite her clear explanation, the mermen were still clueless. It's the main reason why we became a Rebornian in the first place, Vivi exclaimed. Michael found a way to feed us emotion on a daily basis. We fairies are no longer hungry. Serena and the old mermaid looked at each other. Their eyes met, and both of them knew that they might have just stumbled upon the answer to their problem. They didn't know what Vivi was talking about, but the fact that fairies were feeding on lots of emotion meant that they could possibly invoke that within themselves as well. Can you please tell us more about this roller coaster? Serena asked, excitement bubbling up to her face. Why don't you go see it for yourself? He asked them. Chapter 644. Emotions running high. Really? Serena exclaimed. We would love to take you up on your offer, Sir Michael, said the old mermaid. Her demeanor had completely changed compared to when she first met Michael. After all, he wasn't just a normal human boy to them now. He was the person who brought them face to face with a supreme being and could possibly be the one to solve their Tao heart problem. Attendants, please prepare the horse carriage, she said. Sir Michael, please lead the way. He immediately raised his hand and stopped them. There's no need for that. The journey would be too long if we just used a horse-drawn carriage. Even an automobile would be too slow. Serena was confused. But Metropolis is only a day's cycle away from here. We're not going to Metropolis. We're going much further away into the King's region and into the parched lands. Both Serena and the old mermaid were familiar with the map of the royal continent. They had heard of the parched lands, but they didn't give it any importance because it was too far and it was said that the whole place was completely desolate, with only a few demi-humans still struggling to survive. He saw their concern and immediately eased their worries. It's fine. We'll teleport there. Just gather in a small circle so that it'll be easier to transport all of us. The shadow underneath his feet expanded outwards, covering the shallow waters. The merman looked around them, amazed and confused as to what was happening. As he activated his shadow transport spell, the mana in the air significantly decreased, so much so that even the merman took notice of it. He controls this much mana? The old mermaid gasped. A second later, the shadow engulfed them all in a dome, completely covering their surroundings into darkness. They could see nothing but a black void in front of them. Then, the shadow dispersed, retreating back into Michael's shadow. The mermen looked around them and were shocked at the sudden change in scenery. There was no longer a vast ocean behind them, nor a muddy shore in front of them. All they could see was an endless expanse of dry, hot sand that seemed to go through all horizons. Where are we? Serena asked. We're in the parched lands. The nation of Reborn, to be exact. The other mermen gasped in disbelief. It was hard to fathom that they traveled such a long distance in such a short amount of time. They blinked and suddenly, they were at the edge of the royal continent and away from the seas. It's true, the old mermaid muttered. As a mermaid, she had a keen sense of all the water that she has touched or seen in recent memory. It was like a harmless pin was pricking her skin, giving her the water's location. And right now, she felt absolutely nothing. She was trying to sense the water she had just touched only a few moments ago, but she couldn't find it anywhere. The only explanation was that they really did travel all the way to the King's region, no matter how absurd that sounded. Welcome to the nation of Reborn, he said to them. Well, not exactly, I guess. This is just where I built the roller coaster. While the mermen were getting their bearings, they suddenly heard the sounds of metal clanking in the near distance. Then a scream. Kaya! The mermen immediately went into a defensive stance, thinking that there was danger around them. Yeehee! Food! Vivi beamed, immediately making her way towards the roller coaster. Once they realized that there was no danger, the mermen finally saw the giant metal structure in front of them. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It looked like the metallic bones of an ancient monstrous creature. Come on, guys. You should see this, Vivi urged, pushing Serena and the others forward. The merman group eventually walked closer to the roller coaster. They looked up and saw humans riding on metal boxes, screaming and shouting as it sped through the tracks, going up and down in a loop. Those humans, the old mermaid muttered in wonder. I know the looks on their faces. They're both scared and excited. Those expressions were what all mermen dreamed about. They yearned to feel that way. After all, it had been proven that that kind of emotion created the best strengthening of a Tao heart. Unfortunately, this kind of emotion only happens about once in 10 years or even more. Those that were able to experience this were extremely lucky, and considered to have been graced by the Ocean King himself. Yet now there were tens of humans all experiencing the same emotion at the same time. She couldn't believe it. The ride came to a stop, and the humans were escorted out of their seats, only to be replaced by new ones who had waited in line. And just like the first group, these humans also exhibited the same emotion while they tumbled around in the air. She then looked at the gates and saw a large line of people patiently and excitedly waiting for their turn on the roller coaster. And surprisingly, they were also exhibiting excitement and fear even if they weren't on the ride yet. Serena and the old mermaid both came to a realization that this was not a coincidence. This was intentional. This was what a roller coaster was made for. "What do you think?" he asked them. "This is what we wanted," Serena exclaimed, rushing towards Michael and twirled as she ran around him. ChatJK5 explained to him that this was a merman's way of expressing their thanks. It was their equivalent of a hug. "Sir Michael, if the roller coaster can evoke this emotion on humans, then it can certainly do it to mermen as well. You may have solved the greatest problem that we, as a species, have ever faced." The old mermaid sank to the floor, bowing down to him. The other mermen followed suit, making Michael feel awkward. "There's no need to thank me yet. I'm not sure that this roller coaster will be fit for mermen. He built this with humans and other demi-humans in mind, which meant that the thrill factor was directed towards them, not mermen. And as far as he could tell, merman culture and physiology was completely different to humans. What he thinks to be scary may not necessarily translate to mermen. For example, maybe they weren't afraid of heights. After all, they were used to swimming to deep depths, which is quite similar to falling from a great height. But of course, the solution to this was simple. He just had to build a new roller coaster designed specifically for mermen. This would be another huge undertaking, but it was very much worth it. The look of joy and relief on Serena and the other merman's face made it worth it. They were celebrating while wiping their tears, making him feel quite emotional for them as well. Helping other people become comfortable was his motto in life, and this would be the perfect thing to do that. And of course, he'd be lying if he said that he was doing this out of the goodness of his own heart. He was also thinking about money, sand dollars in particular. Chapter 645. Evoking Merman Emotions. The more he thought about it, the more he immediately wanted to start preparing for its construction. It seemed like the Tao heart was a problem for all mermen, which meant that his target market numbered in the millions or possibly even billions. And if he priced a ticket for the roller coasters at just one measly sand dollar, then he would only need 1,000 mermen to purchase a ticket every day to get $10,000 in 10 days. And it was even possible that those mermen would ride the roller coaster multiple times a day, and he'd be able to get to his goal a lot sooner. But of course, he needed to attract 1,000 customers first for him to achieve that. First, he had the mermen get on the roller coaster ride just to see if the ride would work on them at all. If it did, then he wouldn't even need to construct a new ride. "You guys should have a go at it," he advised. Serena and the other mermen seemed more than happy to try out the roller coaster. The mere prospect of having their Tao heart already gave them excitement and a little bit of fear. He used his authority and moved the mermen to the front of the line. Of course, the people who were cut off complained, but he solved that by giving them a coupon that gave them a free ride. "Please leave all your belongings in the locker," said the Rebornian ride attendant. Serena and the old mermaid had to put their very valuable pearl necklace in the locket just like everybody else before they could board the ride. They cautiously entered the seats, their eyes filled with curiosity and a little bit of apprehension. Now that they were actually here, they felt a little bit nervous after seeing the grandiosity of the whole roller coaster. The attendant pushed the locking bar against their chest, securing them to their seat. A few seconds later, the pistons released gas and gave off a PSSH sound before the ride started to move. The roller coaster train slowly got up to a decent height before making a near 90-degree drop that accelerated their speed tremendously. It usually wasn't this fast, but he had the engineers change up the speed so that he could see if it stimulated the mermen's Tao hearts. A few minutes later, the ride came to a stop and the locking bar let loose, allowing them to board off. "How was it?" he asked them. The old mermaid looked at Michael and immediately prostrated on the floor. "My Tao heart hasn't moved this much in 20 years, she said. "Thank you, and I apologize for my rudeness when we first met. I should have introduced myself earlier. My name is Moirana, and I am Princess Serena's caretaker." "It's fine. It's nice to meet you, Moirana," he said to her. "That was very exciting, Michael," praised Serena. "I never knew that there could be something this wonderful in the surface world." The other mermen had the same positive reaction to the roller coaster, which should be a good thing. But Michael wasn't satisfied. He turned to Vivi and asked what she saw during the ride. They were excited FO show, but it's not as much as the humans. Like, if humans' emotions peaked at 100%, then the mermen only reached 40%. For the mermen, this seemed to be enough. After all, even just exhibiting 20% of their emotion would have been so much better than they could have achieved back in Metropolis. To create a merman-themed roller coaster, I need to find out what they fear. That was very important. He wanted to get their emotions rolling at 100% capacity. Thankfully, they had a lot of mermen here that he could ask. "Do you guys have any fear?" Something that makes your heart palpitate. The mermen looked at each other and eventually looked at the Morana. The ancient deep-sea monsters of Atlantis like the Cthulhu, the Kraken, and the Leviathan are the ones that breed fear in any merman. She answered. He was quite surprised by that answer. He thought they'd be desensitized of fear for the ocean monsters because they resided in Atlantis. But it was probably the fact that they intimately knew about these monsters that they feared them so much. Well, I can't bring Cthulhu all the way over here. I'd get turned into fillet if I forced that ancient monster to become a mascot for the roller coaster. How about things in the surface world? Anything you dislike? They had no answer. They haven't been in the royal continent for long, and there were also no documented weaknesses of the mermen. They didn't even fear dehydration because their powers allowed them to extract water from the air and all around them. Well, maybe they just don't know what they're afraid of yet. He quickly summoned Shiina and had her prepare a variety of things that could possibly evoke fear from the mermen. He tried all kinds of plants, rocks, metals, and anything else that he could think of. Vivi was right there beside him, monitoring the mermen's emotions for any reaction. It took them about 4 hours and 1,000 samples before they finally got something. Serena and the other mermen's eyes grew wide as they stared upon a stone in the middle of a table. This rock looked normal, but if one looked at it closely enough, they'd be able to see a skeletal outline of something that was fossilized directly in the stone. It was a cephalopod creature with a coiled shell, which Michael recognized to be an ammonite. Amazing! Serena gushed. It's our ancestor. You can still see the spirals on its shell. It is with great honor to stand here and bear witness to our predecessor. There was reverence in their gaze. Even though this was just an ammonite, they treated it as if it was a holy object that they should cherish. What's so special about this fossil? He asked them. Did you know that all life in this world was born in the seas? Back in the very birth of our planet, there was just but an empty, endless sea of nothingness. And thanks to the sea god, he bestowed life upon our world with a single whisper. We believe that mermen, humans, demi-humans, and beast folks are all connected in some way, being a descendant of the sea god's whisper. This creature, and all other sons and daughters of the sea that have already left the plane of existence, are considered sacred for they have sacrificed their lives in order to make us alive. And the more ancient the creature, the more awed we are of its remnants. They could have possibly witnessed the birth of the sea and even life as we know it. As Moirana expressed her admiration and reverence for the fossil, Vivi suddenly saw an explosion of wondrous emotion coming from Moirana. The strength of her emotion rivaled even that of the humans experiencing the roller coaster for the first time. It reached a 100% peak. Michael! Michael! Vivi said, quickly telling him of her discovery. Chapter 646. Fossil Love. As it turned out, mermen's love and adoration for ancient creatures were so strong that it could evoke a tremendous burst of emotion inside them. This was extremely good news. He finally found a way to stimulate their Tao heart. I could make 2 roller coasters, he realized. One is a thrilling and typical roller coaster, which has lifelike animatronic recreations of sea monsters, and the other is a chill and thematic ride containing fossils that stimulates their reverence for ancient creatures. He didn't even have to limit himself to 2 roller coasters. He could build an entire theme park dedicated to mermen. He'd be able to attract the attention of mermen who wanted to strengthen their Tao heart, and he'd get the attention of humans who wanted to experience the world of mermen. He'd been wanting to build a theme park for the longest time, and it seemed that he'd finally get the chance to do it. He immediately excused himself and teleported back to their headquarters in Metropolis. He searched for Kong, the chief engineer in Reborn who designed the first roller coaster, and the results spoke for themselves. He was sure that with Kong's help, they'd be able to create a theme park so attractive that the mermen would have no choice but to spend all of their sand dollars towards him. Boss, what can I do for you? Kong was surrounded by the other engineers of Reborn, with most of them coming from the Hobmenki lineage. Hey guys, I have a new idea that I want to build. It's a roller coaster again, but this time, I want it to be specifically made for mermen. The engineers looked at each other awkwardly. We can build the structure, boss, but we don't have any clue about mermen, Kong admitted. He then told them about his findings, with the roller coasters making use of 2 items to manufacture emotions from the mermen. The scary ocean monster animatronics for one, and the amazing fossils for the other. They seemed intrigued about the idea, but there was still a hint of unsurety in their eyes. It was as if they weren't confident that they could pull off the idea properly. Right now, I want to build 2 roller coasters, but in the future, we can add different attractions to create a theme park. There could be a carousel underwater, a rain park, a massive aquarium, and so on and so forth. Despite his grand ambitions, he saw his engineers struggle to keep up with his ideas. This probably stems from the fact that they'd never seen a theme ride before. Would you like me to show them an example of theme parks? Really? That'd be awesome. It is one of the perks of my software upgrade, ChatJK5 said proudly. However, I would need the help of him. Harbinger appeared in the void of his mind, seemingly with his hands crossed. I didn't hear, please. I do not have that in my vocabulary. Michael had to interject their little spat, or else they'd go on and on like a pair of bickering siblings. Harbinger, can you do it, please? Fine, but only for the fact that this roller coaster will bring us closer to Sue Drops. Tongue sticking out. A few seconds later, ChatJK5 gave him instructions on how to share information from his memories. All he had to do was look at the yellow Hobmanky engineers and allow them access to the neural network of ChatJK5. Suddenly, multiple threads of ability power sprawled out from his heart and reached the engineers, tapping into their minds. Kong and his team reeled back, as if they were hit directly on the forehead. Their eyes rolled back and showed only its whites as memories began to flash in their brains. They saw a first-person perspective of him walking through a theme park, seeing the giant, towering structures that echoed screams from the inside. They saw animatronics performing human-like movements, making characters seem like they were alive. And everywhere they looked, they could see famous characters and their settings decorated throughout every piece of landmark around them. Even the food was in line with the park's theme. The whole process took just a few milliseconds, but the engineers felt like they'd seen through a lifetime. Now, they were filled with the knowledge and know-how to build their own theme park. The one key takeaway they had from this experience was that theme parks attracted both the young and the old. There was something for everyone, not just the thrill-seekers or the adrenaline junkies. He could see all the engineers' brains start to rumble with inspiration. They were now seeing the same vision that Michael had in his mind. It was a place where thousands upon thousands of mermen walked along their theme park, having fun and experiencing something magical. And of course, at the end of the day, the total number of sand dollars they earned from this would reach in the thousands and possibly more. We can definitely do this, boss. Kong saluted. Good. I now hereby call you the Reborn Imagineers. Kong and the engineers smiled proudly at their new title. It wasn't long before their little group began brainstorming all of the things that they could build with the two roller coasters. For the thrilling roller coaster, I envision the ride going through the mouth of the Kraken. Kong said. That's good, sir. I think that we should use real parts of sea monsters to build the structures. It'll make it all the more real. That can be done. There are some rare items sold that contain real sheddings of these ancient sea monsters. We can definitely use them to build our animatronics. They began throwing out ideas after ideas with excitement in their eyes. They were inspired. Michael already knew it was right to let Kong and the engineers handle this. He could see their ideas evoking great emotion from the mermen. They would definitely fear the roller coaster if they had to go into the mouth of the Kraken at the very start. As for the theme ride, we can build a boat ride that simulates the ancient era. Yes, Kong agreed. We'll have the fossils come alive using magic and animatronic, making the mermen feel like they're back in time, where the oceans were littered with ancient monsters. Michael let them continue to brainstorm. It would probably take a while before they finalized the design of the two themed rides. However, that didn't mean that he couldn't work on it now. He needed to find two things. First, he needed the body parts of monsters living in the sea. It would be great if it was preserved in a pristine condition. The effect of the ride would be much greater if the mermen could see, feel, and smell the monster right in front of them. Second, he needed to find fossils. This one, he wasn't sure if he'd be able to get a lot of. After all, he needed fossils that came from the ocean. And those could only be found on landmass that was previously a body of water millions of years before. Chapter 647. Visiting for materials. Both of those things were hard to find, but not impossible. It would certainly be easier if he had the help of a professional. And thankfully, he knew just the man. He teleported out of the Rebornian Imagineers meeting room and arrived at the front entrance of Barnaby's vault. It had only been a few days since the auction, and already, the place had been cleaned sparkly clean, with no sign of the momentous event that happened before. As soon as the attendant at the door saw him, his eyes widened and flusteredly tripped on his own feet. Sir Michael, is Barnaby there? He asked. Barnaby is at his office, sir. The man saluted. There was a brief moment of silence between the two. Can I come in? He finally asked. Yes. Finally, he was let inside, with the attendant's astonished gaze still following him as he walked. He made his way to the second floor and into Barnaby's office. And before he could even knock, the door suddenly burst wide open as Barnaby welcomed him inside. Michael, my favorite customer, Barnaby said, shaking his hands furiously. How've you been, my boy? Man, this guy is super fast. Does he have a SSS class skill or something? I'm doing good. Come on, sit, Barnaby said, leading him to the sofa. To what do I owe the pleasure? Aren't you supposed to be busy preparing for the arrival of the tourists? Everyone's going on and on about sand dollars, doing everything they can to attract mermen. That's actually what I came here for, he said. I'm currently planning on a project and I need a few exotic materials. Exotic? Barnaby raised his eyebrow. Well, you've come to the right place. What do you need? Phoenix feathers? Golden eggs? Lightning in a bottle? None of those. I need ancient sea fossils. Barnaby stopped for a second and scratched his double chin. That's definitely an exotic request. Do you have anything in particular in mind? Anything. As long as they're sea creatures. How many do you need? 5? 10? More. As much as you can get. Barnaby looked surprised. It seemed that the project Michael was building was a lot bigger than he expected. I have no idea what you're aiming for, but I'm very excited to see it. Let's see. I have a few fossils in my vault, but none of them are from the sea. I have some contacts with collectors, and I'm sure that they can give you what you want. If we're lucky, then they'll even be able to get a perfectly preserved megalodon. But I'm not sure if they'd be willing to sell that out of their personal collection. Barnaby immediately went to work, writing a letter and sending it out via carrier pigeon. It'll probably take a week for them to respond. Come back in a few days, Barnaby said. Will do. But I actually have another request. I need perfectly preserved body parts of sea monsters. Barnaby started chuckling. Preserved sea monsters? Are you trying to scare the mermen away, or what? He said, joking. Yup. While everyone was busy trying to find ways to attract mermen to their companies, it seemed that Michael was doing the exact opposite. Barnaby opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but chose not to in the end. Knowing you, you probably have something in store that will blow everyone away, right? Hopefully, he replied. Well, I have a few preserved sea monster parts in my vault, but I doubt that that's enough for you. I think you have to ask Reptar's help on this one. They specialize in making clothes and armor out of monsters, including ones that come from the sea. Michael nodded. Reptar's company, Crocodile Leather, was part of the Rising Six for a reason, so they'd definitely have the things he needed. He thanked Barnaby for all his help and went on his way to the Crocodile Leather Company. As he left Barnaby's vault, he took out his drone and let it hover in front of him. He quickly pressed the tiny doors on the drone's frame, allowing him to teleport straight in its pocket dimension. Once inside, he headed straight to the control room and piloted the drone to the skies. It wasn't long before he found his destination. Even without the map Barnaby gave to him, he could easily spot Reptar's company from a mile away. It was a large building in the shape of a cowboy boot, which seemed to have been made out of real leather as well. He got out of the drone and floated down to the entrance. Sorry, authorized. The guard was about to turn him away, but he realized who he was. You're the Michael Vanderbilt. Yup. Can I talk to Reptar? Nodding furiously, the guard immediately opened the door and guided him inside the giant cowboy boot building. And as he walked inside, he could see all employees looking at him with gazes of amazement. Eventually, they reached Reptar's office. Michael! Yo! Reptar said, giving him a high five. What brings you around? I heard that you're the man to speak about my request. And that is preserved ocean monsters. The more pristine, the better. Reptar gave him the same look as Barnaby. Practically everyone would be confused with his request, which seemed very counterintuitive given the merman's fear of those creatures. Well, I don't have those, but I can tell you where to get them. There's an old fishing village just west of Metropolis that specializes in those kinds of things. Just tell them that I sent you, and they'll sell you anything you want. Reptar gave him the directions for the fishing village, which he was very thankful for. He talked with Reptar a little bit more and got a tour of their building, all the while Reptar's employees stared at them wherever they went. And just as he was about to leave, Reptar stopped him and had a little request. Hey, can I have a box of RD soda? My employees have been craving for it, but it's never available. Yeah, sure. I'll send a few crates as thanks. As soon as he said that, the entire room erupted in cheers. After visiting those two, Michael headed straight to the Magic Tower. His visit to this place had been long overdue, but he never found the time. Now, he wanted to visit them because he needed Braxton's help. From what he showed in the auction, it seemed that Braxton specialized in creating realistic constructs and homunculi. In order to make the animatronics to be as real as possible, then he needed to learn how Braxton made his pigs so lifelike despite being constructed out of magic. He entered the base of the Magic Tower and walked through the halls as if he'd already been here before. As it turned out, this Magic Tower looked exactly like the Magic Tower back in Kingsbridge Town where Cerberus resided. The only difference were the decorations and the mages around him, but the structure was practically the same. There was even a dedicated place where mages and wizard played chess. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.